Nobody attended my son's birthday party, not a single soul. 3 days later, my father texted me demanding $2,800 for my brother's graduation celebration. He called it a family obligation. I sent them exactly $1 with a note that said, "Best wishes." Then I changed the locks on the house they were living in. By the time the police arrived, they realized they had messed with the wrong daughter. Before I tell you how I legally evicted my own parents, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever been the bank for people who do not even like you. My name is Kamara, and I am 33 years old. I stood in the center of the Wonderland event space in Buckhead, Atlanta. The room was breathtaking. I had spent $4,500 renting this hall. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the three-tier Spider-Man cake that cost me $600. There was a face painter waiting in the corner. A magician I had flown in from Chicago was checking his watch. There were 30 gold Chiavari chairs set up around circular tables covered in silk linens, and every single chair was empty. My son Leo sat at the main table wearing his little red and blue suit. He is only 6 years old. He has severe asthma, so he does not get to run around like other kids often. This party was supposed to be his big day. He looked at the door, his eyes wide with hope, swinging his legs back and forth. He checked his watch, a cheap plastic thing I bought him at Target, and then looked at me. "Mommy, where is Grandma Shirley? Is she bringing Uncle Trey?" He promised he would show me his new car. My heart shattered into a million pieces. I looked at the clock on the wall. It was 2 in the afternoon. The party had started at noon. I had invited 20 people: my parents, Reginald and Shirley, my brother Trey, his wife Courtney, and their extended circle of friends who always claimed they loved Leo. I pulled out my phone for the 10th time. No missed calls, no texts, just silence. I dialed my mother number again. This was the 5th time calling. Finally, she picked up. The connection was clear, but the background noise was chaotic. "Hello, Kamara. Why are you calling so much?" Her voice sounded annoyed, not apologetic. "Mom, where are you?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady so Leo would not hear the panic rising in my throat. "The party started 2 hours ago. Leo is sitting here alone. You said you were bringing the gifts and the cousins." "Oh, that." She sighed. "Listen, we had a bit of an emergency. Your father's car started making this terrible noise on the highway. We are stranded on the side of I-85 waiting for AAA. It is a nightmare. We are not going to make it. Just tell Leo we love him, and we will bring his gifts next week." I gripped the phone tighter. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But then I heard it. In the background behind her voice, there was a sound I recognized. It was the smooth, unmistakable sound of a live saxophone playing jazz, and then the clinking of crystal glasses, and a laugh. A high-pitched, distinctive laugh that belonged to my sister-in-law, Courtney. "Mom, are you at a jazz club?" I asked, my voice dropping to a whisper. "Don't be ridiculous, Kamara," she snapped. "It is the radio. The tow truck driver has the radio on. Look, I have to go. My battery is dying. Do not be dramatic. It is just a birthday party. He is 6, he won't even remember it." The line went dead. I stood there holding the phone, feeling the blood drain from my face. She hung up on me. She lied to me, and then she hung up on me. I looked over at Leo. He had climbed down from his chair and was walking toward the melting cake. He stuck his finger in the icing and licked it, looking small and defeated. "Mommy, are they coming?" he asked softly. I walked over to him, kneeling down in my Valentino dress, not caring if the hem touched the floor. I took his small hands in mine. "No, baby. They are not coming. They had car trouble. But you know what? We do not need them. We have the magician, we have the cake, and we have each other." Leo's lower lip trembled. "But Uncle Trey said he bought me a limited edition action figure." I pulled him into a hug so he would not see the tears burning in my eyes. I signaled the waitstaff. "Cut the cake," I told them. "Pack everything up." We are taking all this food to the homeless shelter on Pine Street. If my family won't eat it, someone deserving will. That drive to the shelter was the longest of my life. Leo fell asleep in the back seat of my Range Rover, clutching a balloon. I drove in silence, my grip on the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. I have paid for everything for this family. I bought the house my parents live in. I paid for Trey's tuition for 8 years because he could not decide on a major. I paid for Courtney's engagement ring because Trey did not have a job, and they could not give me 3 hours. They could not give my son 1 afternoon. When we got home to my penthouse, I carried a sleeping Leo to his bed. I took off his little suit and tucked him in. I kissed his forehead, listening to the wheeze in his chest. I hooked up his nebulizer machine just in case. I swore to him right then and there. This was the last time. They would never hurt him again. I walked out to the living room and poured myself a glass of water. The penthouse was quiet. It was a stark contrast to the chaos inside my head. I sat down on my velvet sofa and looked at the pile of unwrapped gifts I had bought for Leo just to make sure he had enough to open. I felt like a fool. A rich, successful, lonely fool. I picked up my phone. I needed to know. I needed to confirm what my gut was telling me. I opened Instagram. I usually avoid it because seeing my family's posts often annoyed me, but today I needed evidence. I went to Courtney's profile, my sister-in-law, the woman who always smiled to my face and made snide comments about my hair or my job behind my back. She was a white woman who married into our black family and somehow made herself the center of attention at every gathering. She was always the victim, always fragile, always needing money for her mental health. There it was, a new story posted 45 minutes ago. The location tag read, "The St. Regis, Atlanta," one of the most expensive hotels in the city, famous for its Sunday brunch. The photo was a selfie of her and Trey. They were dressed up. Trey was wearing a suit I bought him last Christmas. Courtney was wearing a floral dress that cost more than my monthly utility bill. They were smiling. Not just smiling, they were beaming. Behind them, I could see my parents. My father, Reginald, was holding a menu looking relaxed. My mother, Shirley, the woman who claimed she was stranded on the side of the highway, was holding a flute of orange liquid, a mimosa. I zoomed in on the photo. I have an eye for details. It is why I am good at real estate. On the table, partially hidden by a vase of fresh orchids, was the bill folder. It was open. I could clearly see the total written at the bottom. $642. I read the caption, "Healing Sunday with the hubby and the in-laws. So grateful for this family time. Sometimes you just need to prioritize mental health and avoid the drama. Hashtag family first. Hashtag no drama. Hashtag brunch goals." I stared at the screen. Drama. My son's birthday was drama. My 6-year-old asthmatic son waiting for his grandmother was considered drama that she needed to avoid. They chose overpriced eggs and champagne over Leo. They lied to me about a car breakdown so they could go spend $600 at the St. Regis. And here is the kicker. I paid Courtney's credit card bill last month. That mimosa she was drinking, I effectively paid for it. That suit Trey was wearing, I paid for it. The gas in the car they drove there, I probably paid for that too. I did not scream. I did not throw my phone. A strange calm washed over me. It was the calm of a bridge burning down. I took a screenshot of the story, then I took a screenshot of the timestamp. Then I went to my banking app and took a screenshot of the transfer I sent Trey last week for his car insurance. I saved everything into a hidden folder on my phone labeled Receipts. I did not comment on the photo. I did not like it. I did not send a rage-filled text message to the family group chat. I simply turned off my phone screen and set it face down on the marble coffee table. For years, I had been the safety net. I was the one who fixed the problems. I was the one who kept the secrets. I was the one who made sure the lights stayed on in their house. But looking at that photo, seeing the joy on their faces while my son slept with tears dried on his cheeks, I realized something. I was not their daughter or their sister. I was their resource, and resources can dry up. I walked over to the window looking out over the Atlanta skyline. The city lights were twinkling below me. I remembered the lease agreement for the house my parents were living in. I remembered the authorized user access I had given Trey on my Platinum Amex. I remembered the tuition checks. Monday morning was going to be very busy. I was not going to ruin their brunch. I was going to ruin their lives. And I was going to start with exactly $1. 3 days passed in silence. I did not call them. They did not call me. They probably assumed I was sulking, or maybe they just forgot about us completely. I went to work. I closed a deal on a warehouse in West End, and I took Leo to the park. I was waiting. I knew it was coming. They always reached out when they needed something. Then on Wednesday afternoon, my phone pinged. It was a text from my father. Kamara, great news. Trey's graduation ceremony is confirmed. We are so proud. We are booking the private room at Chops for the celebration dinner. The deposit is $2,800. Send it over by Zelle. We need to book it tonight. Do not be late. I looked at the text. No hello. No asking how Leo was. Just a demand. $2,800. They spent $600 at brunch on Sunday, but now they needed my money for dinner. Courtney followed up with a text a minute later. Hey sis, I know you are probably busy, but Trey needs a new suit for the ceremony. He wants this Tom Ford one. It is only $1,500. Can you transfer that too? Consider it a peace offering for being difficult about the birthday. Love you. Being difficult. I was being difficult because they abandoned my son. I sat in my leather office chair and cracked my knuckles. It was time. I opened my banking app. I typed in Trey's account number. I entered the amount, $1. In the memo line where I usually wrote tuition or gift, I typed a new message. For condoms. Please do not reproduce. Best wishes. I hit send. Then I picked up my office phone and dialed my lawyer. Michael, I said when he answered. Prepare the eviction notice. Yes, for my parents. And Michael, make sure the sheriff serves it to them personally. The war had begun, and I had just fired the first shot. 3 days. That is exactly 72 hours of silence. For 3 days I checked my phone every hour, not because I wanted to talk to them, but because a small, foolish part of me hoped for an apology. I hoped my mother would call and say, Kamara, I am so sorry about the car trouble. How was Leo's party? I hoped my father would text and ask if his grandson enjoyed the cake. But the phone remained silent. There were no inquiries about Leo's asthma, which flares up when he cries. There were no questions about the magician or the food. To them, the event simply did not happen. It was a non-event. My son was a non-factor. I was standing on the second floor of a commercial warehouse in West End that my company had just acquired. The air smelled of sawdust and fresh paint. I was wearing my hard hat and holding a set of blueprints discussing the installation of a new ventilation system with my contractor, David. I love my work. I love the tangibility of it. You buy a broken building, you fix the foundation, you put in new windows, and suddenly it has value. It is simple. It is logical. Unlike my family, real estate gives you exactly what you put into it. My phone buzzed in the back pocket of my jeans. Then it buzzed again. And again. A rapid-fire succession of vibrations that usually meant an emergency. I held up a hand to David. Give me a second, I said, pulling out the device. It was the family group chat. The chat I had muted on Sunday but had not yet left. The notification preview showed my father's name, Reginald. My stomach tightened. Not with excitement, but with that familiar dread that every scapegoat child knows. The dread of the ask. I unlocked the phone and opened the message. There was no preamble. No hello Kamara, no how are you, just a wall of text that reeked of entitlement. Great news everyone, my father wrote. Trey has officially received his final grades. He is graduating. After 8 long years, our boy has done it. We are so proud of the man he has become. To celebrate this momentous occasion, we are booking the private VIP room at Chops Lobster Bar for Saturday night. We are inviting the pastor and the deacons, so it needs to be top tier. Kamara, I need you to wire $2,800 for the deposit immediately. They will not hold the room without it. Do not let your father down. This is a big day for the family name. I stared at the screen, blinking. $2,800. They could not drive 20 minutes to my son's birthday party because of a fake car breakdown. They could not spend $20 on a toy for their grandson. But they wanted me to drop nearly $3,000 for a dinner deposit, and let us talk about this graduation. Trey is 26 years old. It took him 8 years to get a 4-year degree in general studies because he changed his major 5 times. First it was pre-med, then it was business, then psychology, then sports management, and finally, he settled for general studies just to get out. Who paid for those extra 4 years of tuition I did? Who paid for his apartment near campus because the dorms were too noisy for his delicate concentration? I did. I was still processing the sheer audacity of my father's demand when another message popped up. This one was from Courtney. Yay, so excited, she typed, followed by a string of party popper emojis. Also, Kamara, since you are already sending the deposit, can you handle Trey's suit? He saw this gorgeous midnight blue tuxedo at Tom Ford in Phipps Plaza. It is size 40R. It is about $1,500, but he needs to look the part of a future CEO. He deserves the best after working so hard. Thanks, sis. I felt a laugh bubbling up in my throat, but it was a cold, bitter sound. A future CEO. Trey had never held a job for longer than 3 months. His last job was at a sneaker store and he quit because his feet hurt. But sure, let us dress him in a $1,500 tuxedo so he can eat lobster on my dime. I did the math in my head. $2,800 for the dinner deposit. $1,500 for the suit. That was $4,300. They were asking me for $4,300 via text message, as casually as asking someone to pass the salt. They did not remember Leo. Remember. They did not care that my 6-year-old blew out his candles alone, but they remembered my bank account balance. They remembered that Kamara always pays. Kamara always fixes it. Kamara always wants to buy their love. For years, that was true. I thought if I paid enough, if I was successful enough, if I solved enough of their problems, they would finally look at me with the same adoration they gave Trey. I thought I could purchase my seat at the family table. But Sunday proved me wrong. Sunday proved that my money was welcome, but I was not. My money was the guest of honor, and I was just the delivery service. I looked around the empty warehouse. I owned this building. I owned 3 others just like it. I had built a logistics empire from nothing while fighting asthma and raising a special needs child alone. I was powerful. I was respected in this city. My signature on a document could move millions of dollars. And yet to Reginald, Shirley, Trey, and Courtney, I was nothing more than a walking ATM machine with a pulse. Courtney's message sat there on the screen glowing with toxic positivity. Thanks, sis. She called me sis only when she wanted something. The rest of the time I was the aggressive sister-in-law, the one who worked too much, the one who wasn't soft and feminine like her. She was a stay-at-home wife to a husband who didn't work, and who funded that lifestyle, who paid the supplemental credit card bill every month because they couldn't make ends meet. I realized then that they truly believed I would do it. They had no doubt in their minds. They assumed I had moved on from Sunday. They assumed I was so desperate for their inclusion that I would jump at the chance to sponsor this dinner. In their twisted logic, allowing me to pay for the party was them doing me a favor. They were letting me be involved. They were giving me the privilege of serving them. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. I could type a furious paragraph. I could list every dollar I had spent on them in the last decade. I could scream about Leo. I could demand an apology. But what would that achieve? They would just gaslight me. My father would say I was being dramatic. My mother would say I was holding a grudge. Courtney would cry and say I was ruining Trey's big moment. They would twist my anger into evidence of my instability. No. Anger is cheap. Revenge is expensive. And I was in the mood to spend. I thought about the tuxedo, Tom Ford, size 40R, midnight blue. It was a beautiful suit. Trey would look very handsome in it while he stood next to his wife, who despised me, and his parents, who used me. I thought about the steakhouse. Chops. I knew the manager there. It was a place for closers, for business tycoons, for people who actually earned their money. The idea of Trey sitting there celebrating a degree that took him nearly a decade to finish while eating food, paid for by the sister, he ignored, made my blood boil. But it boiled with a cold, precise heat. I closed the text thread without replying. I put the phone back in my pocket. I turned back to David, my contractor. "I am sorry, David," I said, my voice calm and steady. "Where were we? Ah, yes. The ventilation system. Let's make sure we get the best filters available. I want the air in here to be perfectly clean. I am removing all the toxins from my life, starting with this building." David nodded, unaware of the double meaning in my words. I worked for another 2 hours. I focused on the blueprints. I focused on the concrete and the steel. I let the silence on the group chat stretch out. I knew they were waiting. I knew they were staring at their phones, expecting the notification that said Kamara sent $2,800. They were probably already planning what appetizers to order. When I finally got into my car to drive home, the sun was setting over Atlanta. The sky was a bruised purple, beautiful and ominous. I sat in the driver's seat of my Range Rover and took a deep breath. They wanted a response. They wanted money. They wanted me to play my role. Okay, I would play a role, but I was done playing the ATM. I was about to audition for a new character, the villain. I drove home with a small, dangerous smile playing on my lips. I was going to send them money. Oh yes, I was absolutely going to send them money, but I was going to send them exactly what they felt my son was worth. I pulled into my garage, took the elevator up to my penthouse, and walked straight to my office. I sat down at my glass desk, opened my laptop, and logged into my bank account. The screen illuminated my face. I saw my balance. I could buy that steakhouse if I wanted to. I could buy 10 Tom Ford suits and burn them in the driveway. It wasn't about ability, it was about principle. I navigated to the transfer page. I selected Trey's account. I remembered setting this account up for him when he was 18, hoping he would learn to save. Instead, he used it as a funnel for my earnings. I typed in the recipient name, Trey Future, CEO. I moved the cursor to the amount field. My finger hovered over the number keys. 2,800 number 1. Decimal point. 0. 0. $1. The price of a cheap pack of gum. Less than the cost of a bus ticket. Now for the message. This was the most important part. The memo line on a bank transfer is a permanent record. It stays on the statement forever. It is a digital tattoo. I typed slowly, savoring every keystroke. For condoms, please do not reproduce. Best wishes. I read it back. It was petty. It was cruel. It was absolutely perfect. It was the bridge-burning match I had been looking for. I moved the mouse to the send money button. This click would change everything. This click would end the family dinners. It would end the fake holidays. It would end the illusion of love. Once I pressed this button, there was no going back. I thought of Leo blowing out his candles in the empty room. I clicked send. Transaction complete. I leaned back in my chair and watched the confirmation screen. Now, all I had to do was wait for the explosion. And knowing my family, the fallout was going to be nuclear. The glass walls of my corner office on the 34th floor offered a panoramic view of the Atlanta skyline. From up here, the cars on Peachtree Street looked like toys, and the people were invisible. My family had never been to this office. They did not even know it existed. To them, I worked a boring administrative job at a logistics company. They had no idea I owned the logistics company. They had no idea that the building I was sitting in was part of my portfolio. I preferred it that way. If they knew the true extent of my wealth, the demands for money would not just be for dinners and suits. They would be for houses, yachts, and investments in Trey's imaginary business ventures. I swiveled my Herman Miller chair away from the view and looked at my phone lying on the mahogany desk. The screen was dark, but I could feel the weight of the messages waiting inside. $2,800 for a dinner deposit, $1,500 for a Tom Ford tuxedo, $4,300 in total. That was the price of their admission. That was the fee they expected me to pay to be allowed into their presence. I picked up the phone. The glass felt cool against my palm. I unlocked it and navigated to my banking app. Face ID recognized me instantly and the dashboard loaded. My balance stared back at me. It was a number that could easily cover their request 100 times over without making a dent. I could pay for the dinner. I could buy the suit. I could pay off my parents' mortgage again if I wanted to. The money was not the problem. The problem was the principle. The problem was the empty chairs at my son's birthday party. The problem was the mimosa toast at the St. Regis while I was explaining to a 6-year-old why his grandmother did not show up. I tapped on the transfer funds tab. My list of frequent recipients popped up. Trey was right at the top. I had sent him money so many times over the years that the app probably thought he was my husband or my child. I tapped on his name. The nickname he had set for himself on the banking platform appeared on the screen. Trey Future CEO. I stared at those words. Future CEO. A man who had never managed anything other than his fantasy football team. A man who needed his big sister to buy his clothes for his own graduation. The irony was so thick I could taste it. I moved my thumb to the amount field. My heart was beating a little faster, not from fear but from adrenaline. This was it. This was the moment I stopped being the doormat and started being the door that slammed in their faces. I typed the number 1. Then the decimal point, then 2 zeros, $1. It looked lonely on the screen. Usually the numbers I typed there had 3 or 4 zeros behind them. $1 felt like an insult. It felt like a slap in the face. It was perfect. I scrolled down to the memo line. This was usually where I wrote things like tuition or rent or happy birthday. Today I needed to write something that would stick, something that would burn. I needed a message that would make sure they never asked me for a single cent ever again. I began to type. For condoms. I paused. It was crude. It was direct. It was exactly what needed to be said. I continued typing. Please do not reproduce. Do not let this gene pool expand any further. Best wishes. I read it back to myself. For condoms. Please do not reproduce. Best wishes. It was nuclear. It was the kind of message that ends relationships permanently. There is no coming back from telling your brother he should not have children because his genetics are flawed. But looking at the way they treated Leo, looking at the way they treated me, I knew I was right. The cycle of toxicity, entitlement, and narcissism stopped here. My finger hovered over the review transfer button. For a split second, the old Kamara tried to intervene. The Kamara who wanted to be a good daughter. The Kamara who wanted her mother to love her. The Kamara who thought that if she just paid enough, she would be worthy. Don't do it, that voice whispered. Just pay the money. Keep the peace. Maybe they will change. I looked at the framed photo of Leo on my desk. He was smiling, holding his inhaler like a toy. He was innocent. He did not deserve to grow up thinking it was normal to buy people's affection. He did not deserve a grandmother who lied to him. I killed the old Kamara right then and there. I pushed the button. Review transfer. Sending $1. To Trey, future CEO. Memo for condoms. Please do not reproduce. Best wishes. I took a deep breath, inhaling the conditioned air of my silent, expensive office. I pressed confirm. The screen loaded for a second. The little spinning wheel turned, and then a green checkmark appeared. Success. Transfer sent. I set the phone back down on the desk face up. I interlaced my fingers behind my head and leaned back. The silence in the office was heavy, pregnant with anticipation. I counted in my head. 1, 2, 3. Banks are fast these days. Zelle is instant. Trey was probably at the tuxedo shop right now. Or maybe lounging on my parents' couch refreshing his app waiting for the $4,000 to hit so he could feel rich. 30 seconds passed. I took a sip of my sparkling water. 60 seconds passed. Then the phone lit up. It started with a single vibration. A text message. I did not look at it yet. I wanted to let it build. Then came another vibration. Then a long, sustained buzz. That was a phone call. Then the phone started dancing across the polished mahogany surface. Buzz, buzz, buzz. It sounded like an angry hornet trapped in a jar. The screen was flashing continuously. Reginald calling, missed call from Reginald, Shirley calling, text from Trey. What is this? Text from Courtney. Is this a joke? Reginald calling. Reginald calling. I watched the show. It was fascinating. 5 minutes ago, I was invisible to them. 5 minutes ago, I was just a resource to be tapped. Now I was the most important person in their world. I had their undivided attention. I reached out and tapped the screen to silence the ringer, but I did not answer. I watched the notifications stack up like a Tetris game. Trey $1. Are you crazy? The suit is on hold. Shirley. Pick up the phone, Kamara. Your father is having chest pains. Courtney, you are disgusting. How dare you talk about our future children like that, Reginald? You ungrateful wretch, after everything we did for you. I laughed, a genuine loud laugh that echoed off the glass walls. Chest pains. My father had chest pains because he didn't get his lobster dinner deposit. Courtney was offended about future children when she couldn't even acknowledge my existing child. The phone was vibrating so hard it was actually moving toward the edge of the desk. It was an earthquake of rage, a tsunami of entitlement crashing against the shores of my indifference. I picked up the phone one last time. I did not open the messages. I did not answer the calls. I simply swiped down to the control center. I tapped the icon of the half moon, do not disturb. The vibrating stopped. The screen went dark. Peace returned to my office. I stood up and walked to the window. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the city. Somewhere down there in the suburbs, my family was screaming. They were probably throwing things. They were probably calling me every name in the book. But up here in the sky, everything was quiet. I had just fired the first shot in a war they did not even know they were losing. I had kept the receipt for the $1 transfer. It would look beautiful in my evidence folder. I checked my watch. It was 5:30. Time to go home to my son. We had a movie night planned, and for the first time in years, I wasn't going to be interrupted by a crisis that wasn't mine. I grabbed my purse, turned off the lights, and walked out of the office. The $1 transaction was complete. But the eviction notice. That was just getting started. The silence in my office did not last long. In fact, it lasted exactly 45 seconds. That was the amount of time it took for the notification to travel from my bank server to Trey's phone, and for the reality of the number one to sink into his brain. It started with a single buzz, then another. Then the phone began to convulse on the mahogany desk, like it was having a seizure. I watched the screen light up, illuminating the darkened room with flashes of names that used to mean everything to me, and now meant nothing. Trey, future CEO, was the first to strike. His text message popped up on the lock screen. Is this a joke? I did not touch the phone. I just leaned back in my chair, sipping my sparkling water, watching the show. Trey sent another one immediately after. $1, Kamara, stop playing games. The suit is on hold. The lady is waiting for the card number. Send the 1,500. And Dad is waiting for the deposit confirmation. Stop being weird. I chuckled softly. He had not even read the memo yet. He was so focused on the money, so entitled to my earnings, that he had not even bothered to look at the note attached to the transfer. He just saw the single digit and panicked. Then the realization hit. Trey sent a third text. This one was in all caps. What did you write? Condoms, are you sick? Finally. He had read it. The vibration became continuous now. An incoming call from Reginald. I let it ring. The screen showed my father's face, a photo I had taken of him at a barbecue 3 years ago. He looked happy in the picture. He looked like a dad who loved his daughter. It was a lie. The man calling me now was not a father. He was a debt collector calling a defaulting client. The call went to voicemail. Immediately a banner appeared. New voicemail from Reginald. Then came the text from my mother Shirley. The preview showed the first few lines, but I unlocked the phone to read the whole thing. I wanted to see the full extent of her holy wrath. Kamara, you are a devil. I do not know what Satan has taken hold of your heart, but you are evil. How dare you humiliate your brother like this? How dare you insult his manhood and his future children? We are a family of faith. We do not talk like that. You are selfish, bitter, and cold. Send the money immediately and apologize to Trey, or do not bother coming to Sunday service. God does not like ugly Kamara. And right now you are acting very ugly. I read the words twice. A devil. She called me a devil. This was the same woman who 3 days ago lied about being stranded on the highway so she could drink mimosas with her daughter-in-law. She did not have time to call me on my son's birthday, but she had plenty of time to type out a paragraph condemning my soul because I refused to pay for a party. God does not like ugly. That was her favorite phrase. She used it every time I tried to set a boundary. I was about to put the phone down when the next message arrived. This one was from Courtney. I knew this one would be different. My family's insults were usually wrapped in religious guilt or obligation. But Courtney knew exactly where to aim to inflict the most damage. Her text was a novel. It took up the entire screen. Wow. Just wow. I knew you were jealous, Kamara, but I did not think you were this pathetic. You cannot stand seeing Trey happy, can you? You cannot stand seeing us happy. You are sitting alone in that apartment with your cats, or whatever, miserable because no man wants you, so you try to ruin our moment. I paused. I did not have cats. I had a son. A son she ignored. I continued reading her message. You know what your problem is? You are so aggressive. You are so hostile. You are the typical angry black woman who thinks the world owes her something just because she has a little bit of money. Well, guess what? Money does not buy class. And it definitely does not buy love. Trey chose me because I am soft. I am feminine. I support him. You just emasculate everyone around you. Keep your dollar. We do not need your charity, but do not expect to be part of our lives when Trey makes it big. I stared at the phrase angry black woman. There it was, the weaponization of my identity against me. Courtney, with her blonde highlights and her tearful eyes that always got her out of trouble, was calling me a stereotype because I closed my wallet. She was using my race and my strength as an insult. She was painting my boundaries as aggression. For a second, it stung. It stung because I had spent my whole life trying to be the opposite. I tried to be the perfect daughter, the quiet one, the helpful one, the one who never raised her voice. I had suppressed every ounce of valid anger I ever felt, just to avoid being labeled exactly what she just called me. And it did not matter. The moment I said no, the label was slapped on me anyway. The phone rang again. It was Courtney calling this time. She probably wanted to scream the insults at me in person. She probably wanted to hear me cry. But I was not crying. My eyes were dry. My heart was steady. Reading that text message was the most liberating moment of my life. It confirmed everything. They did not love me. They tolerated me. And the moment I stopped paying, the tolerance evaporated, revealing the racism and the resentment underneath. I took a deep breath. It was time to clean house. I went to my contacts list. I started with Trey. I did not reply to his questions. I scrolled to the bottom of his contact card. The red letters looked inviting. Block this caller. I tapped it. A confirmation box popped up. You will not receive phone calls, messages, or FaceTime from people on the block list. Confirm. Trey was gone. The noise from him ceased instantly. Next was Reginald. My father. The man who taught me how to ride a bike and then taught me that his love cost $2,800. Block this caller. Confirm. Gone. Then Shirley. My mother. The woman who quoted scripture while stabbing me in the back. Block this caller. Confirm. Gone. Finally, Courtney. I lingered on her name for a second. I almost wanted to send the screenshot of her brunch receipt back to her. I almost wanted to tell her that the angry black woman she despised just paid off her credit card last week. But silence is louder. Silence is the ultimate power move. Engaging with her would only validate her victimhood. I tapped block this caller. Confirm. The phone stopped vibrating. The screen went dark. The room was silent again. I sat there for a moment listening to the hum of the air conditioning. It felt like I had just depressurized a cabin at 30,000 feet, the ears popping the sudden rush of air. I was alone in the office. Technically, I had just orphaned myself. I had just cut off my entire immediate family in the span of 2 minutes. Most people would feel panic. Most people would feel grief. I checked my pulse. It was slow and rhythmic. I felt lighter. I felt like I had just dropped a heavy backpack I had been carrying for 33 years. I stood up and walked over to the floor-to-ceiling window. The city lights of Atlanta were waking up below me. Somewhere out there in the suburbs, 4 people were staring at their phones, realizing that the messages were not delivering. They were realizing that the call was going straight to a disconnect tone. They were realizing that the bank was closed. Permanently. I picked up my purse. I needed to go home to Leo. I needed to cook him dinner. I needed to be a mother to the only person in this world who loved me and not for what I could buy him. As I walked to the elevator, my phone buzzed one last time. It was an email notification. It was from my lawyer, Michael. Subject: eviction notice draft. Attachment notice _ quit _ Reginald _ Shirley _ Evans. .pdf. I smiled. The digital explosion was over. Now the real fireworks were about to begin. It had been exactly 45 minutes since I blocked my entire family on every digital platform known to man. I was in the kitchen of my penthouse chopping bell peppers for Leo's dinner. The rhythmic sound of the knife hitting the wooden cutting board was soothing. Chop, chop, chop. It was the sound of order. It was the sound of a life that was finally under my control. Leo was in the living room wearing his noise-canceling headphones, watching a documentary about space. He was obsessed with black holes. He liked the idea that there was a force in the universe strong enough to pull everything in and make it disappear. I looked at him and smiled. I knew exactly how he felt. The peace did not last. The intercom on the wall buzzed. It was a sharp, intrusive sound that cut through the quiet atmosphere of the apartment. I wiped my hands on a towel and walked over to the panel. It was the concierge from the lobby downstairs. "Ms. Evans, I apologize for the disturbance," the concierge said, his voice tight with professional strain. "But there is a group of people here claiming to be your family. They are quite spirited. They are demanding to see you. I told them you are not accepting visitors, but the older gentleman is threatening to call the police and claim you have abducted someone." I closed my eyes and exhaled slowly. Abducted someone. They were probably talking about me abducting their dignity, or perhaps their wallet. They knew they couldn't get to me through the phone, so they had driven 20 miles from the suburbs to ambush me in my own home. They had come to collect their pound of flesh in person. "Send them up, Earl," I said calmly. "Are you sure, Ms. Evans, I can call security to remove them?" "No," I said. "Let them come up. We need to finish this face to face." I hung up the intercom. I walked into the living room and tapped Leo gently on the shoulder. He pulled off one ear cup. "Hey, buddy," I said, keeping my voice light. "Mommy has some business to take care of. Why don't you go into your room and play on your iPad for a bit? Keep the headphones on." "Okay," I want you to watch the whole documentary and tell me about the event horizon later. Leo nodded, grabbed his tablet, and scampered off to his room. I watched him close the door. I waited until I heard the click of the latch. Then I turned to face the front door. I did not have to wait long. I heard the elevator ding down the hall. Then came the footsteps. Heavy, angry footsteps stomping on the plush carpet of the corridor. It sounded like a stampede. They were not just walking, they were marching. They were coming to war. Bam, bam, bam. They didn't ring the doorbell. They pounded on the solid oak door with their fists. It was a violent, entitlement-fueled drumming. "Open up, Kamara." It was Trey's voice. "Open this door right now." I smoothed down my silk blouse. I checked my reflection in the hallway mirror. I looked calm. I looked expensive. I looked like a woman who owned the building, which technically I did through a shell company. They thought I rented this place. They thought I was living above my means. They had no idea. I unlocked the deadbolt and pulled the door open. The hallway was filled with them. It felt like all the oxygen had been sucked out of the corridor. My father Reginald stood in the front, his chest heaved, his face a mask of purple rage. My mother Shirley stood beside him, clutching her purse like a weapon, her eyes wide with performative shock. Courtney was behind them, holding her phone up, probably recording for her TikTok followers, ready to spin the narrative. And Trey, my baby brother, the 30-year-old baby, looked ready to cry. "You blocked us," Trey shouted, pointing a shaking finger at my face. "You sent me $1 and then you blocked me. Who do you think you are?" "Hello to you too," I said, leaning against the doorframe. "I see you got my graduation gift. I thought you would appreciate the financial advice attached to it." "How dare you!" Courtney shrieked from the back. She pushed past Trey, getting in my face. "You are sick, Kamara. You are a bitter, lonely woman. You told my husband not to reproduce. You are jealous because no one wants to have kids with you." I looked at Courtney. I looked at her designer bag that I paid for. I looked at her highlights that I probably paid for too. "I am not jealous, Courtney," I said softly. "I am exhausted. I am exhausted by the parasite that has attached itself to my bank account. And today I applied the pesticide." That was the wrong thing to say. Or maybe it was the right thing. My father Reginald stepped forward. He was a big man. He had used his size to intimidate me my entire life. When I was a child, his voice alone would make me shrink into the corner. He loomed over me now, invading my personal space, bringing with him the smell of Old Spice and righteous indignation. "You watch your mouth, girl," he growled. "I am your father. I brought you into this world. I put a roof over your head. You put a roof over my head until I was 18, I corrected him. And for the last 5 years I have been putting a roof over yours. Or have you forgotten who pays the mortgage on the house you sleep in?" Reginald's face contorted. He raised his hand. It was a reflex, a fast, violent motion. His open palm swung toward my face. I did not flinch. I did not step back. I stared him directly in the eyes, unblinking. His hand stopped inches from my cheek. He saw something in my eyes he had never seen before. He saw a lack of fear. He saw a wall of steel. He realized in that split second that if he touched me, the consequences would be far worse than a blocked phone number. He lowered his hand slowly, but his eyes were still burning with hate. "You are ungrateful," he spat. "You think because you have a little money you can disrespect the head of this family? You are nothing. You are a cold, heartless bitch." "Reginald," my mother gasped, but she didn't step in to defend me. She just clutched her pearls. "I am done with you," my father declared, his voice booming in the hallway. "You want to block us? Fine, we are blocking you. You are expelled from this family, Kamara. Do not call us. Do not come to Sunday dinner. And do not ever, ever show your face at my house again. You are not welcome in my home." I felt a smile tugging at the corners of my lips. It was involuntary. It was the smile of someone holding a royal flush while their opponent went all in with a pair of twos. He had said the magic words. My house. My home. He truly believed it. He had lived there for so long, paying $0 in rent, $0 in mortgage, and $0 in taxes, that he had actually convinced himself he owned the property. He had forgotten the foreclosure 5 years ago. He had forgotten the tears he wept when I saved him from bankruptcy. He had rewritten history to suit his ego. Your house. I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Yes, my house, he shouted. The house I built. The house you are banned from. I looked at my mother. She was nodding in agreement, looking at me with disdain. I looked at Trey and Courtney, who were smirking, happy to see me cast out. I straightened my posture. I crossed my arms over my chest. I looked my father dead in the eye, and I delivered the line that had been brewing in my soul for half a decade. Dad, I said, dropping the formality. Are you sure it is your house? Because I seem to remember buying the deed from the bank 5 years ago when you gambled away the mortgage payments. I seem to remember that my name, Kamara Evans, is the only name on the title. His face went slack. The red color drained away, leaving a sickly gray pallor. I continued, my voice gaining strength. You are not the owner, Reginald. You are a tenant at will, and you just threatened your landlord. I stepped back into my apartment and placed my hand on the doorknob. You expelled me from the family I accepted. Now I am expelling you from my property. You have 30 days. I slammed the heavy oak door in their faces. I locked the deadbolt. Click. I leaned my forehead against the cool wood of the door. From the other side there was total silence. No banging, no shouting, just the heavy, suffocating silence of a truth bomb that had finally detonated. Then I heard a small voice behind me. Mommy, are the bad people gone? I turned around. Leo was standing in the hallway holding his iPad. He looked scared. I walked over and scooped him up into my arms, hugging him tighter than I ever had before. Yes, baby, I whispered into his hair. The bad people are gone, and they are never ever coming back. I carried him to the kitchen. I felt tears pricking my eyes, not from sadness but from relief. I had done it. I had said the words, but I knew this wasn't the end. The silence in the hallway was just the shock wearing off. Tomorrow they would lawyer up. Tomorrow they would fight. But they didn't know that I had already won. I pulled my phone out of my pocket and dialed Michael, my attorney. Michael, I said when he answered. Send the eviction notice. Tonight. The heavy oak door was locked, but the echo of my father's voice still vibrated in the hallway. My house. He had screamed those words with such conviction, with such absolute certainty, that for a split second, even I had paused. It is amazing how the human mind can rewrite history to protect the ego. He believed it. He genuinely believed that the 4-bedroom colonial on Rolling Hills Drive belonged to him. He believed that the roof over his head was a testament to his hard work as a patriarch. I walked into my home office and sat down at my desk. My hands were shaking slightly, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of finally pulling the trigger. I opened the bottom drawer of my filing cabinet. It was the drawer I kept locked. Inside, there was a fireproof box. I keyed in the code and lifted the lid. There it was. A thick manila envelope labeled Project Phoenix. I pulled it out and slid the documents onto the glass surface of my desk. The top document was a deed. A warranty deed, to be precise. I ran my fingers over the paper. It took me back 5 years. The memory hit me like a physical blow. It was a Tuesday night in November. It was raining. I remembered the rain because it matched the mood in my parents' kitchen. I was 28 years old, just beginning to see real success with my logistics company. My father had called me in the middle of the night, sobbing. Not crying. Sobbing. It was a sound I had never heard from him before. I drove over in my pajamas. I found him sitting at the kitchen table, surrounded by notices. Red letters. Final warning. Notice of default. Intent to foreclose. He had gambled it away. Online poker. Sports betting. It started small, he said. Just a way to relax after work. But then he lost, and he chased the loss, and then he lost more. He had refinanced the house twice without telling my mother. He had drained his 401k. And now the bank was coming to take the house. Please, Kamara, he had begged, clutching my hand. His palms were sweaty. You cannot tell your mother. It will kill her. She loves this house. It is her pride and joy. If she finds out I lost it, she will leave me. You have to help me. You are the only one with the credit. You are the only one with the cash. I looked at him. I looked at the man who had spent my childhood criticizing my choices, telling me I was too ambitious for a girl, telling me I should be more like Trey. And now he was begging me to save him. I could have said no. I should have said no. But I was the daughter who wanted to be good. I was the daughter who wanted to be the hero. I made a deal with the devil that night. I told him I would pay off the arrears. I told him I would pay off the entire mortgage balance. But there was a condition. I am not giving you $300,000, Dad, I had said. I am buying the house. The bank is going to take it anyway. So I will be the bank. He agreed instantly. He would have agreed to anything to stop the shame. We went to a lawyer the next day. A lawyer I chose. My father signed a quitclaim deed transferring the property to an entity called KE Holdings, LLC. He thought it was just a shell company to hide the transaction from the public record. He did not bother to read the operating agreement of the LLC. If he had, he would have seen that KE stood for Kamara Evans and that I was the sole member and manager. We signed a lease agreement. It was a standard residential lease, but the rent amount was set to $0. In the legal world, this created a specific status. They were not owners, they were tenants at will. This meant they lived there at the pleasure of the landlord, and the tenancy could be terminated at any time with proper notice. For 5 years, I kept my mouth shut. I let him play the big man. I let him host Christmas dinners at the head of the table, carving the turkey in a house he did not own. I let my mother brag to her church friends about her beautiful home. I paid the property taxes every year. I paid the insurance. I paid for the new roof when it leaked in 2021. And how did they repay me? By forgetting my son. By demanding money for a party I was not welcome at. By screaming at me in my own hallway and telling me I was banned from my own property. I looked at the deed on my desk. The ink was black and permanent. Reginald Evans Grantor, KE Holdings, LLC grantee. I picked up my phone and dialed Michael. It was late, but Michael was the kind of lawyer who answered on the first ring if you paid him enough. And I paid him very well. Michael, I said, it is time. Kamara. Is everything okay? No, I said, my voice flat. We are executing the contingency plan on the Rolling Hills property. There was a pause on the other end. Michael knew the history. He was the one who drafted the papers 5 years ago. He had warned me then. He had said Kamara mixing family and real estate is a recipe for disaster. If you let them live there for free, they will never respect you. You were right, Michael, I said, answering his unspoken thought. I am sorry it came to this, he said gently. What do you want to do? I want them out, I said. Prepare the notice to quit. Immediate eviction, he asked. No, I said. I want to do this by the book. I want 0 loopholes. Georgia law requires 60 days for tenants at will, but since there is no written lease for this specific year, we can argue 30 days based on the violation of the conduct clause. They threaten the landlord. That is grounds for expedited removal. I will draft it now. Michael said, the sound of typing already audible in the background. Notice to quit for cause. Threatening behavior and creating a hostile environment. Do you want me to have it served? Yes, I said. Use a process server. Do not send it by mail. I want a stranger to hand it to my father. I want him to have to sign for it. Consider it done. I will have it ready for your digital signature in 10 minutes. I hung up. I looked out the window. The city was dark now. I wondered what my parents were doing. They were probably driving back to that house right now fuming. My father was probably gripping the steering wheel, ranting to my mother about how ungrateful I was. They would pull into the driveway. They would unlock the front door with the key I allowed them to keep. They would walk into the living room and sit on the sofa I paid for. They would sleep in the bed under the roof I maintained. They had no idea that the clock had started ticking. 10 minutes later, my email pinged. Subject: urgent documents for signature, Rolling Hills eviction. I opened the PDF. It was brutal in its simplicity. To Reginald and Shirley Evans. From KE Holdings, LLC. Notice to quit. You are hereby notified that your tenancy at the premises known as 1402 Rolling Hills Drive is terminated effective 30 days from the date of this notice. You are required to vacate the premises and surrender possession to the landlord. Failure to comply will result in legal proceedings for dispossessory warrant. I scrolled to the bottom. There was the line for the landlord's signature. I did not hesitate. I did not cry. I did not think about the Christmas mornings or the birthday parties. I thought about Leo sitting alone at the table. I thought about the text asking for condom money. I thought about the hand raised to slap me. I tapped the screen. My digital signature stamped onto the line. Kamara Evans, manager. It was done. I closed the laptop. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It wasn't guilt. It was power. For 33 years, I had been the child desperate for approval. Tonight, I was the landlord, and the rent was finally due. The glow of my dual monitors was the only light in the room. It was a cold blue light that reflected off my glasses. To anyone watching, I looked like I was working late on a spreadsheet or reviewing a contract. But I was doing something far more important. I was performing surgery. I was severing the financial umbilical cord that had kept my family alive for the last decade. I had already sent the eviction notice. That was the long game. That would take 30 days to fully play out. But I needed them to feel the pain now. I needed them to understand tonight that the Bank of Kamara was permanently closed. I opened a new browser window and typed in the URL for American Express. My fingers flew across the keyboard. Username, password, two-factor authentication code. The dashboard loaded. It was a beautiful sight. My credit score was 810. My available credit was enough to buy a small island, but I wasn't looking at my numbers. I was looking at the authorized users section. There it was, Trey Evans. I clicked on his profile. The transaction history unspooled like a receipt of my stupidity. Today, 8:45 p.m. The Gold Room. Pending charge, $1,200. Today, 6:30 p.m. Shell gas station, $80. Yesterday, Uber Eats, $45. He was out right now. He was at the Gold Room, one of the most pretentious clubs in Atlanta. He was popping bottles of champagne to celebrate a graduation that I paid for, wearing a suit I bought surrounded by people who thought he was rich. He was spending my money to impress strangers while I sat here alone. I looked at the Manage Card button. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. I felt a cold, clinical detachment. It was the same feeling I got when I fired an incompetent contractor. I clicked Remove Authorized User. A warning box popped up. Are you sure you want to remove Trey Evans? This card will be deactivated immediately. Any recurring charges will be declined. I whispered to the empty room. I have never been more sure of anything in my life. I clicked Confirm. The screen refreshed. The name Trey Evans vanished from the list. It was instantaneous. Somewhere in the digital ether, a signal was being sent to the MasterCard network. The piece of plastic in his pocket was now just a piece of plastic. It was worthless. I didn't stop there. I opened a new tab. Georgia Power. This was for the house on Rolling Hills Drive. My house. The house where my father had just screamed at me. I logged in. The bill was due next week. $350. They like to keep the air conditioning at 68 degrees because my mother said she ran hot. Of course she ran hot. She never had to sweat for $1 in her life. I went to the payment methods section. My checking account was linked for autopay. It had been that way for 5 years. They didn't even know how much electricity cost. They just used it and the magical fairy Kamara made the bill disappear. I clicked delete payment method. Are you sure this will cancel autopay? Yes, I am sure. I deleted it. Then I went to the water company. Delete payment method. Then Xfinity. The premium cable package with all the sports channels my father watched all day. Delete payment method. From now on, when the bill arrived in the mailbox, it would be a real bill. They would have to write a check. They would have to look at their own bank balance. And based on what I knew about their finances, the lights would be going out very soon. Finally, I went to Geico. My father drove a Lincoln Navigator. It was a gas guzzler. It was big, it was safe, and it was expensive to insure. I paid the premium every 6 months, $2,000. The next payment was scheduled for tomorrow. I logged in. I selected the policy. Cancel policy. Reason for cancellation. I scrolled through the options. Sold vehicle number. Found better rate number. I selected other. In the comment box, I typed simply, the policyholder threatened the financier. Cancel. I sat back in my chair. It was done. In the span of 10 minutes, I had stripped them of their credit, their utilities, and their insurance. I had turned off the life support. I closed my laptop and closed my eyes. I let my imagination travel across the city to Buckhead, to the VIP section of the Gold Room. I could see it clearly. The music was pounding. The bass was vibrating the floor. Trey was sitting on a plush velvet banquette holding a glass of Grey Goose. Courtney was next to him dancing, flipping her hair, taking selfies with the flash on. The waitress, a young woman in a black dress, was walking toward their table. She was holding a black leather folder. The bill. Trey didn't even look at it. He was too busy being the big man. He just reached into his pocket and pulled out the heavy metal platinum card. My card. The card that said Kamara Evans on the front and Trey Evans in smaller letters below it. He tossed it onto the tray with a dismissive flick of his wrist. "Keep it open!" he shouted over the music. "We are ordering another round." The waitress nodded and walked away to the terminal. She swiped the card. I imagined the sound. Beep. Declined. She frowned. She probably wiped the strip on her apron. Maybe the chip reader was dirty. She inserted it again. Processing. Declined. Code 05. Do not honor. That is the code for a deactivated card. It is not a connection error. It is a hard rejection. The waitress sighed. She hated this part of the job. She walked back to the VIP table. The music faded for a moment as the DJ switched tracks. "Sir," she said, leaning in. Trey looked up annoyed. "What? There is a problem with your card," she said. "It was declined." Trey laughed. "That is impossible. That is an Amex Platinum. There is no limit." "Run it again." "I did run it again, sir. It says invalid card. Do you have another form of payment?" Courtney stopped dancing. The friends around the table stopped drinking. The atmosphere shifted from celebration to suspicion instantly. Trey stood up. His face was flushing red. He wasn't the big man anymore. He was a fraud. "Call the bank," he shouted. "My sister probably forgot to pay the bill or something. It is a mistake. I do not have time for that." "Sir," the waitress said, her voice getting harder. "The bill is $1,200. I need a card that works. Now." Trey patted his pockets. He pulled out his own debit card, the one from his personal checking account, the one with $80 in it. He knew it wouldn't work. Courtney knew it wouldn't work. "Courtney." "Give me your card," Trey hissed. "I left my wallet in the car." Courtney lied. She didn't leave it in the car. She just didn't want to pay. The bouncer noticed the commotion. He started walking over. He was a big guy, much bigger than my father. He crossed his arms. "Is there a problem here?" the bouncer asked. I sat in my dark office and smiled. There was a big problem. And for the first time in his life, Trey couldn't call his big sister to fix it. He couldn't call me to transfer money. He couldn't blame it on a bank error. He was stuck. He was humiliated. He was broke. I checked my phone. It was still on Do Not Disturb, but I could see the screen lighting up silently. Trey calling. Trey calling. Trey calling. He was panic dialing. He was realizing that the $1 transfer wasn't a joke. It was a warning shot, and the declined card was the cannonball. I didn't feel sorry for him. I thought about Leo blowing out his candles alone. I thought about the text calling me an angry black woman. I turned my phone face down. "Enjoy the dishes, Trey," I whispered. I stood up and walked to the kitchen to pour myself a glass of wine. A nice, expensive Cabernet. I had paid for it with my own money. It tasted like freedom. Tomorrow, the real chaos would begin. Tomorrow, the eviction notice would be served. Tomorrow, they would wake up in a house with no internet and drive a car with no insurance. But for tonight, I was just going to enjoy my wine and the silence. The lifeline was cut. They were on their own. The best reality TV show in the world is not on cable. It is the one you produce yourself when you control the utilities of the people who hate you. I was sitting in my living room sipping a cup of chamomile tea. My laptop was open, displaying the Georgia power outage map. It was a sea of green dots indicating that the grid was functioning perfectly. Everyone in the subdivision of Rolling Hills had electricity. Everyone, that is, except for one specific 4-bedroom colonial at the end of the cul-de-sac. I had timed it perfectly. I knew my parents' routine. At 8:30 on a Wednesday night, my father would be sitting in his recliner, watching sports commentary. My mother would be in the kitchen, probably making a smoothie with the high-end blender I bought her last Christmas. The air conditioning would be humming. The lights would be blazing. They would be comfortable. They would be feeling secure in the house they claimed was theirs. I imagined the moment the switch flipped. It would not be a dramatic explosion. It would be a sudden, suffocating silence. The hum of the refrigerator would die. The television screen would go black. The lights would vanish, plunging them into the kind of darkness that feels heavy and absolute. I checked my phone. It was 8:32. Right on cue, my father's name popped up on the screen. He was calling. I watched the phone vibrate on the table. I imagined him stumbling around in the dark, stubbing his toe on the coffee table, screaming for my mother to find a flashlight. "Reginald calling, Reginald calling." I took a sip of tea. I wondered if he realized yet that this wasn't a storm. I wondered if he had looked out the window and seen that the neighbors' lights were still on. That was the cruelest part. They were the only house on the street shrouded in darkness. It was a spotlight of shame. Then the phone rang again. This time it was a different number. It was a 404 area code I did not recognize. I usually do not answer unknown numbers, but intuition told me this was part of the show. I picked up and stayed silent. "Camera. Is that you?" It was Trey. He sounded breathless. He sounded panicked. And in the background I could hear the thumping bass of club music and angry voices. "Who is this?" I asked, feigning ignorance. "It is Trey." "Don't hang up. Listen, something is wrong with the Amex. It is not working. The waitress is threatening to call the cops. You need to call the bank right now and authorize the charge. It is $1,200. I leaned back in the sofa. "Oh, Trey, I am so sorry. I cannot do that." "What do you mean you can't?" "Just call them. They are going to arrest me." "Kamara. Everyone is looking at me. Courtney is crying in the bathroom." I closed the Amex account. "Trey." There was a silence on the other end. A silence so profound it cut through the club noise. "You what?" he whispered. "I closed the account, and I removed you as an authorized user. You are spending money you do not have." "But the bill." "What am I supposed to do about the bill? I do not know, Trey. Maybe you can wash dishes. Or maybe you can sell that watch you bragged about buying last month. Isn't it a Rolex? Surely a pawnbroker is open somewhere." "You can't do this!" he screamed. His voice cracked. He sounded like a child. He sounded like the 6-year-old Leo who cried when his grandmother didn't show up. But Trey was 26. "I already did it," I said softly. "Good luck, future CEO." I hung up. I imagined the scene at the club, the bouncers closing in, the realization that the party was over, the humiliation of having to call our parents. And that was the beautiful irony. He would call our parents. He would call the house phone because he was blocked on their cells. And the house phone wouldn't ring because the modem required electricity. He was stranded. They were in the dark. The entire ecosystem of entitlement I had supported for years had collapsed in less than an hour. The night passed. I slept like a baby. The next morning I woke up early. I had one more notification to wait for. The tracking number for the process server. According to the update, the server, a man named Mr. Henderson, was scheduled to arrive at Rolling Hills Drive at 9 in the morning. I poured myself a coffee and sat by the window. I wished I could be a fly on the wall. At the house, the sun would be coming up, revealing the reality of their situation. The food in the refrigerator was starting to spoil. The house was getting stuffy without the AC. My parents had probably spent a sleepless night sweating and arguing, blaming the power company, blaming the bank, blaming everyone but themselves. At 9 o'clock sharp, Mr. Henderson walked up the driveway. He rang the doorbell. It didn't work, of course. No power. So he knocked. A hard, authoritative knock. My mother Shirley opened the door. I know exactly what she was wearing. Her silk robe, the one she thought made her look like a rich housewife. She probably looked disheveled, her hair messy from the heat. She probably smiled when she saw the man. She probably thought he was from the power company. "Thank God you are here," she likely said. "The power has been out all night. Do you know who we are? We pay our bills. This is unacceptable." Mr. Henderson would have looked at her with that blank professional stare. "Are you Shirley Evans?" he would ask. Yes, I am. "Are you here to fix the meter?" "You have been served, ma'am." He would hand her the thick envelope, the one with the red stamp on the front. Urgent legal documents. Shirley would take it confused. She would watch him walk back to his car. She would stand on the porch, tearing open the envelope. Inside was the notice to quit. The eviction notice. I can see her reading it. I can see her eyes scanning the legal jargon. Kamara Evans landlord, Reginald and Shirley Evans tenants. Termination of tenancy. 30 days to vacate. She didn't collapse. She didn't cry. That is not who my mother is. My mother is a woman whose arrogance is armored with steel. She laughed. She stood on the porch of a house with no electricity, holding a legal document ordering her to leave, and she laughed. She turned around and walked back into the hot, dark house. "Reginald," she yelled. "Reginald, look at this." My father would stumble out of the bedroom. "What is it?" "Is the power back?" "No," Shirley said, waving the paper in the air. "It is Kamara. She sent us a prank letter. Look at this. She says she is evicting us." Reginald took the paper. He read it. His hands started to shake. Unlike Shirley, he remembered signing the deed. He remembered the night he gambled away the house. He knew the legal reality. But looking at his wife, looking at the scorn on her face, he couldn't admit it. He couldn't admit that he was a failure who had been living on charity. So he chose the lie. "She is bluffing," Reginald said, his voice trembling slightly. "She is just trying to scare us because we blocked her. She thinks she can bully us." Shirley snatched the paper back. "She is a wicked child. Does she really think a piece of paper can kick us out of our own home? We have lived here for 30 years. We raised her here. This is our house." Shirley took the eviction notice between her manicured fingers. She ripped it in half. Then she ripped it again. She threw the confetti of paper onto the floor. "She is not going to do anything," Shirley declared. "She is just throwing a tantrum. She will calm down in a few days. She will come back crawling, apologizing, begging us to forgive her. She always does. She needs us, Reginald. She has no one else." Reginald nodded, wiping sweat from his forehead. "You are right, honey. She is just acting out. We just need to wait her out. But what about the power? Oh, she probably forgot to update the card or something, Shirley said, dismissing reality entirely. I will go to the neighbors and charge my phone. Then I will call the power company and give them a piece of my mind. And then we are going to get dressed. We have a graduation dinner to plan. I am not letting her little drama ruin Trey's week. They truly believed it. They stood in the wreckage of their lives and convinced themselves it was just a minor inconvenience. They tore up a court-ordered document as if it were junk mail. I received the email confirmation from the process server. Successfully served at 9:05 a.m. I closed my laptop. They thought I was bluffing. They thought I needed them. They thought the game was still being played by the old rules. They had no idea that I wasn't playing a game anymore. I was running a business. And bad tenants always get exactly what they deserve. I stood up and stretched. The panic had started, but the denial was holding it back. That was fine. Denial is a flammable substance. And I had plenty of matches left. I picked up my keys. I had a busy day ahead. I needed to meet with the locksmith, and then I needed to make a call to the university bursar's office regarding a certain tuition check. The lights were out at Rolling Hills, but for me the future had never looked brighter. The Lincoln Navigator backed out of the driveway at exactly 10 in the morning. I was parked 3 houses down in a nondescript sedan I kept for site visits, watching them leave through my sunglasses. Even from this distance I could see the tension in the car. My father was driving with a stiffness in his shoulders that suggested he was terrified the engine would die or a warning light would flash. My mother sat in the passenger seat, applying lipstick in the visor mirror, desperate to maintain the mask of the perfect matriarch. In the back seat, Trey and Courtney were probably scrolling through their phones trying to find a credit card that had not yet been declined. They were heading to the salon and the barber shop. I knew their routine. Graduation was tomorrow, and despite having no electricity, no running water, and no access to funds, they were determined to look the part. They were going to get their hair done, get their nails manicured, and probably try to charm the service workers into letting them pay later. They were masters of the "I left my wallet in the car" routine. I waited until the SUV turned the corner and disappeared from sight. Then I put my car in gear and rolled slowly up the driveway. I was not alone. Behind me was a white van marked Miller Security Solutions. Behind that was a box truck from a moving company I used for my commercial evictions. We were a convoy of consequences. I stepped out of the car. The morning air was humid already, promising a sweltering Georgia afternoon. I walked up the front steps of the house. The paint on the railing was chipping. I made a mental note to have that sanded and repainted next week. I used my spare key to unlock the front door. It stuck a little. My father had never bothered to oil the hinges. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The smell hit me first. It was the smell of a house that had been sealed up in the heat, with no air conditioning for 24 hours. It smelled of stale air, unwashed dishes, and impending rot. It smelled of neglect. I walked into the living room. It was a shrine to mediocrity. The walls were covered in photos of Trey. Trey at prom. Trey at his high school graduation. Trey playing Little League baseball. There was not a single photo of me. Not one. Even Leo was absent from the walls. It was as if I did not exist in this house except as the ghost who paid the bills. Mr. Miller, the locksmith, walked in behind me. He was a large man with a tool belt that jingled as he moved. "Ms. Evans," he asked, "is this the foreclosure?" "No, Mr. Miller," I said, running my finger along a dusty side table. "This is a repossession. We are upgrading the security. I want the deadbolts replaced on every exterior door, front, back, side, and garage." "Got it." "What kind of hardware are we installing?" "Biometric," I said. "Fingerprint scanners with a keypad backup. And I want the master code to be sent directly to my phone. No physical keys. Keys can be copied. Fingerprints cannot." He nodded, impressed. "That is top of the line. We will get started right away." I turned to the foreman of the moving crew. His name was Marcus. He had worked with me on clearing out abandoned warehouses before. He knew the drill. Marcus, I said. We are doing a garage load. I want everything in the common areas packed into boxes. The furniture stays as it belongs to me, but personal items, clothes, knickknacks, photos, dishes, electronics, all of it goes into boxes. Everything, Marcus asked, looking around at the clutter. Everything, I confirmed. But Marcus listened to me carefully. I want you to be gentle. Use bubble wrap, use packing paper. Label every box clearly. Kitchen, living room, master bedroom. I do not want a single glass broken. I do not want a single scratch on a photo frame. We are doing this strictly by the book. According to Georgia law, I have to protect the tenant's property for a specific period. I am placing it in the garage for safekeeping. Understood, Marcus said. He signaled his team. All right, boys, let us get to work. Start in the living room. I stood in the corner and watched them dismantle my parents' life. It was strange to watch. Usually seeing your childhood home packed up is an emotional experience. It is supposed to be sad, but I felt nothing but a cool clinical satisfaction. One mover took down the large portrait of Trey in his cap and gown from high school. He wrapped it in brown paper and placed it in a box. Just like that, the golden child was erased from the wall. Another mover went to the entertainment center. He unplugged the massive 65-inch television my father watched football on every Sunday. The television I bought for his 60th birthday. He coiled the cords neatly and lifted the screen. I walked into the kitchen. The sink was full of dishes. They had left in a hurry. There was a half-eaten bowl of cereal on the counter. The milk had curdled in the heat. I put on a pair of rubber gloves. I picked up the bowl and dumped the contents into the trash. I rinsed the bowl and put it in the dishwasher. Even in eviction, I was cleaning up after them. The movers moved efficiently. They were like ants swarming the house, stripping it bare. I went into the master bedroom. My parents' room. The bed was unmade. Clothes were strewn everywhere. It looked like a teenager's room, not the sanctuary of two adults in their 60s. I opened the closet. My mother's side was packed with clothes, dresses with tags still on them, designer bags stacked on the top shelf, shoes that cost more than my mortgage payment. Pack it all, I told the mover standing in the doorway. Every shoe, every bag. I watched as he took down a red dress. I recognized it. My mother wore it to the church gala last year. She told everyone she bought it in Paris. I knew for a fact she bought it at Neiman Marcus with the supplementary card I gave her. It took 4 hours. By 2 in the afternoon, the house was transformed. The clutter was gone. The photos were gone. The smell of stale food was replaced by the smell of cleaning supplies, as I had hired a cleaning crew to come in right behind the movers. The house echoed now. It sounded like the empty shell it was. I walked out to the garage. It was a wall of cardboard, 50 boxes stacked neatly from floor to ceiling, their entire life categorized and labeled: Reginald's golf clubs, Shirley's vanity, Trey's sneakers, Courtney's makeup. It looked so small. All that arrogance, all that pride reduced to a pile of brown boxes in a hot garage. Mr. Miller tapped me on the shoulder. "We are all set, Mrs. Evans. The new locks are active." He handed me a tablet. I pressed my thumb against the screen. The system registered my print. Administrator access granted. I walked to the front door. The old brass lock was gone. In its place was a sleek black digital panel. It looked modern. It looked impenetrable. I placed my thumb on the scanner. Beep, whir, click. The deadbolt slid back smoothly. I stepped out onto the porch and pulled the door closed. I pressed the lock button. The bolt slid home with a solid, definitive thud. The red light on the panel blinked once. Secured. I stood there for a moment listening to the cicadas buzzing in the trees. The neighborhood was quiet. The sun was beating down on the asphalt. They were still at the salon. They were probably laughing, gossiping, getting their hair sprayed and their nails painted. They were preparing for their big weekend. They were preparing to celebrate Trey's mediocrity. They had no idea that they were homeless. They had no idea that when they put their key into this lock tonight, it would not turn. It would be a piece of metal scratching against a computer that did not recognize them. I walked down the steps to my car. I took one last look at the house. For the first time in my life, it looked beautiful, not because of the architecture, but because it was finally truly mine. I got into my car and checked the time. It was 2:30. The lockout was complete. Phase 1 of the eviction was executed perfectly. Now all I had to do was wait for the sun to go down. I wanted to be far away when they returned. I did not need to see their reaction. I knew exactly what it would look like. Denial, then anger, then fear, and finally the realization that Kamara was not coming to save them. I started the engine and drove away, leaving the fortress on Rolling Hills Drive locked, loaded, and waiting for its former occupants to crash against its walls. The Lincoln Navigator rolled up the driveway at exactly 11:15 at night. I was watching the live feed from the security camera on my iPad while sitting in bed with a glass of wine. The car looked heavy, sluggish, carrying the weight of 4 people who had spent the entire day pretending to be wealthy while knowing their credit cards were dead. They had probably spent the evening lingering at the salon or driving around aimlessly to avoid coming back to a hot, dark house. But eventually, everyone has to go home. Or at least to the place they think is home. I watched my father Reginald step out of the driver's seat. He looked exhausted. His shoulders were slumped. The streetlights cast long shadows across the lawn. My mother Shirley got out slowly, fanning herself with a pamphlet she must have picked up somewhere. Even at night, the Georgia humidity was stifling. Trey and Courtney spilled out of the back seat holding shopping bags that I knew were empty or filled with cheap items paid for with cash. Reginald walked up the front steps, jingling his keys. I turned up the volume on my iPad. I wanted to hear this. I heard the metal key slide into the lock. Or rather, I heard it try to slide in. It clinked uselessly against the new biometric scanner faceplate. "What in the world?" Reginald muttered. He tried again. Scratch, clink, scratch. Shirley walked up behind him. "What is taking so long, Reginald?" "It is hot out here. Let us inside. The key won't go in," he said, his voice rising in panic. "There is something wrong with the door." "Let me see," Shirley said, pushing him aside. She peered at the lock. "This isn't our lock. This is a computer." "Why is there a computer on our door?" Trey and Courtney came up the steps. Trey looked at the sleek black panel and realized exactly what it was. He had seen these on MTV Cribs. "She changed the locks," Trey whispered. "That psycho actually changed the locks." Courtney let out a shriek that probably woke up the dogs 3 houses down. "She locked us out." "She cannot do that. My makeup is in there. My dress for tomorrow is in there." Reginald pounded on the door with his fist. "Open this door, Kamara. I know you are in there. Open this door right now." I took a sip of my wine. I was not in there. I was 10 miles away, safe and cool in my penthouse. When no one answered, the panic shifted into rage. "Call the police," Courtney screamed. She pulled out her phone. Her battery was low, but she had enough charge to make a scene. "Call 911. Tell them there is an intruder. Tell them she stole the house." Courtney dialed. I listened to her voice pitch up an octave, shifting into her victim persona. 911. "Please help. We are at 1402 Rolling Hills Drive. There is a woman. She has locked us out of our own home. She is mentally unstable. I think she might be armed. We are terrified. Please send someone." I shook my head. Mentally unstable. Armed. She was checking every box to ensure the police arrived with their guns drawn. She was trying to get me killed. This was not just a family dispute anymore. This was dangerous. I minimized the camera app and opened my email. I drafted a new message to the Alpharetta Police Department precinct captain, whom I had met at a Chamber of Commerce event last year. But first, I needed the officers on the scene. 10 minutes later, the blue lights washed over the driveway. 2 patrol cars pulled up. The neighbor's porch lights started flicking on. Mrs. Higgins across the street stepped out in her bathrobe. This was the ultimate humiliation for Reginald and Shirley. They cared more about their reputation than anything else, and now they were the stars of the neighborhood crime show. 2 officers stepped out. One was a tall, older sergeant. The other was a younger rookie. Reginald rushed down the steps, arms wide. "Thank God you are here, officers. My daughter. She has gone crazy. She barricaded the house. We just want to go to sleep." The sergeant held up a hand. "Calm down, sir. Is your daughter inside the house right now?" "We don't know," Courtney interjected, wiping away fake tears. "She changed the locks while we were gone. She has been threatening us all week. She cut off our power. She is trying to hurt us." The sergeant looked at the dark house. Then he looked at the well-dressed family standing next to a luxury SUV. It was a confusing picture. "I am going to check the perimeter," the rookie said. I decided it was time to make my entrance. I pressed the microphone button on the Ring app. "Officer," I said clearly. The sound boomed from the speaker on the front door. Everyone jumped. Reginald spun around looking for me in the bushes. "Up here," I said. "On the camera." The sergeant walked up the steps and looked at the doorbell. "Ma'am, are you inside the residence?" "No, officer," I said, keeping my voice calm and professional. "I am at my own residence in Buckhead. My name is Kamara Evans. I am the legal owner of this property." Reginald shouted at the camera. "Liar, I built this house, officer." I continued, ignoring my father. "These people are former tenants who have been served with a legal notice to quit earlier this morning. Their tenancy has been terminated due to hostile behavior and threats against the landlord." "Tenants," Courtney screamed. "We are her parents. Biology does not override property law," I said. "Officer, if you check your dispatch email, or if you give me your email address right now, I can send you the deed to the property, the eviction notice that was served at 9:05 a.m. today by Henderson Process Servers, and the receipt for the new locks." The sergeant looked at Reginald. "Sir, is this true? Does she own the house?" Reginald sputtered. It is complicated. We have a family arrangement. She is just holding the papers for tax purposes. It is my house." "So your name is not on the deed?" the sergeant asked, cutting to the chase. "Well, no, but— And did you receive an eviction notice today?" Shirley stepped forward. "She sent us a piece of paper. We tore it up. You cannot kick family out with a piece of paper." "Ma'am," the sergeant sighed. "That piece of paper is a legal document. If you tore it up, that does not make it invalid." I spoke again through the speaker. "Officer, I have also packed their personal belongings. They are in the garage. The code to the garage keypad is 1234. They are welcome to take their boxes and leave, but they are not entering the main dwelling. I have revoked their access." "You can't do this," Trey yelled at the doorbell. "My suit is in there. My graduation is tomorrow." "Your suit is in a box marked Trey's closet in the garage," I replied, "along with your PlayStation and your sneaker collection." The sergeant turned to Reginald. "Look, folks, this is a civil matter. If she is the deed holder and she has served you notice, I cannot force her to unlock the door. In fact, if you try to break in, you will be committing breaking and entering." "But where are we supposed to sleep?" Shirley wailed, the reality finally setting in. "That is not for me to solve, ma'am," the officer said. "But you cannot stay here. If the owner wants you off the property, you have to go." Courtney turned on the officer. "You are useless. She is abusing us. You are letting her get away with it." "Ma'am, lower your voice or I will cite you for disorderly conduct," the sergeant warned. He looked tired. He turned back to the camera. "Ms. Evans, are you pressing charges for trespassing if they stay?" I paused for dramatic effect. "If they are not off my driveway in 10 minutes, yes, I will press charges." The sergeant nodded. "You heard her. You have 10 minutes to grab your boxes from the garage and vacate the premises." Reginald looked at the camera. His face was a mixture of hatred and defeat. I knew that look. It was the look of a man realizing his power was an illusion. "Kamara," he said, his voice shaking, "if you do this, If you embarrass us like this, you are dead to me. I have been dead to you since I stopped writing checks, Dad, I replied. Goodbye. I watched on the screen as the sergeant escorted them to the garage. I saw the garage door open. I saw them staring at the wall of cardboard boxes. I saw Trey kick a box in frustration. I saw Courtney crying real tears this time. I saw my mother slump against the side of the Navigator. They spent the next 10 minutes frantically shoving boxes into the back of the SUV. There wasn't enough room. They had to leave half their things on the driveway. At 11:45, the Lincoln Navigator backed out of the driveway. The police cars followed them to the end of the street to make sure they didn't come back. I turned off the iPad. The house was empty. The driveway was clear. They were gone. I lay back on my pillows. It was the best night's sleep I had had in 33 years. But I knew the war wasn't over. Tomorrow was graduation. And I had one final lesson to teach Trey about economics. The blue strobe lights of the patrol cars swept across the front lawn, illuminating the faces of my family in harsh, rhythmic flashes. From my bedroom 10 miles away, I watched the feed on my iPad screen. It was like watching a silent movie that suddenly found its voice. The sergeant, a man whose name tag read Miller, had stepped back to his cruiser to check his onboard computer. For 5 agonizing minutes, my family stood on the driveway confident. Reginald leaned against the hood of his Lincoln Navigator, wiping sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. He looked at my mother and whispered something. I could not hear it through the doorbell microphone, but I could read his body language. He was telling her it would be fine. He was telling her that he was Reginald Evans, the patriarch, and no police officer would kick him out of his own castle. Courtney was busy scrolling on her phone, probably deleting her live stream now that the police hadn't immediately arrested me. Trey was kicking at a pebble, looking bored, assuming that Daddy would fix it like he fixed everything else. Then Sergeant Miller slammed his car door shut. The sound echoed in the quiet suburban night. He walked back up the driveway. His walk had changed. It was no longer the casual stroll of a peacekeeper. It was the purposeful stride of an enforcer. He held a clipboard in his hand. Reginald straightened up, putting on his best church deacon smile. "Well, officer," he said, his voice dripping with false charm. "I assume you have cleared up this misunderstanding. If you could just ask the fire department to break down the door, we can forget this whole mess. We won't even press charges against my daughter for the prank." Sergeant Miller stopped 3 feet away from my father. He did not smile back. He shone his flashlight directly onto the paper on his clipboard. "Mr. Evans," the officer said, his voice flat and loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "I have just reviewed the documents sent by Ms. Kamara Evans, as well as the property records from the Fulton County Tax Assessor's database." Reginald's smile faltered. "And it is just a formality. I paid for the—" "Sir, stop talking," the officer interrupted. He didn't shout, but the command was absolute. "According to the warranty deed recorded 5 years ago, the sole owner of this property is a limited liability company managed by Kamara Evans. Your name does not appear on the title. Your wife's name does not appear on the title." "That is a lie," Shirley screamed, stepping forward. She pointed a manicured finger at the camera lens. "She stole it." "She tricked us, ma'am. Step back," the officer warned. He turned his attention back to my father. "Mr. Evans, I also have a digital receipt of a notice to quit served to this address at 9 o'clock this morning by Henderson Process Servers. The process server's notes indicate that a female resident fitting your wife's description accepted the document and then destroyed it. Is that correct?" Reginald looked at Shirley. Shirley looked at the ground. The silence was deafening. The lie they had told themselves, that I was bluffing, that the paper meant nothing, was crumbling under the weight of the law. "I did not read it," Shirley mumbled. "I thought it was a joke." "Ignorance of the law is not a defense," the sergeant said. "You were legally notified that your tenancy was terminated. By returning here tonight and attempting to force entry, you are now in violation of Georgia Criminal Code regarding trespassing." Trespassing. Reginald choked out the word. In my own home. It is not your home, sir, the officer said. It is Miss Evans's property, and she has revoked your permission to be here. The officer placed his hand on his belt near his handcuffs. I saw Trey's eyes widen. He had never been this close to real consequences before. Here is how this is going to work, the sergeant continued. You have two options. Option A is that you get in your vehicle and leave this property immediately. You do not come back. You do not knock on the door. You stay away until you have a court order that says otherwise, which I doubt you will get. And option B, Courtney asked, her voice trembling. Option B is that I place all four of you under arrest for criminal trespass and disorderly conduct, the officer said calmly. We will drive you down to the county jail. You will be booked. You will be fingerprinted. And since it is Friday night, you will likely stay in a holding cell until Monday morning for a bond hearing. I watched Reginald's face. I saw the moment his ego died. He looked at the house. He looked at the black biometric lock that barred him from his recliner and his big screen TV. He looked at the neighbors, Mrs. Higgins and Mr. Henderson, who were standing on their lawns watching the fall of the Evans dynasty. He realized he had lost. Not just the house, but the war. We need our things, Reginald whispered. He sounded old. He sounded broken, Ms. Evans has stated that your personal effects are in the garage, the officer said. I will allow you 10 minutes to load what you can into your vehicle. Anything else will have to be retrieved by a third-party moving company at a later date. But you are not entering the main dwelling. Is that clear? Reginald nodded slowly. Yes, that is clear. The sergeant turned to the camera. Ms. Evans, are you still there? I pressed the microphone button. I am here, officer. Do you wish to press charges at this time? He asked. I looked at them on the screen. My mother was weeping into her hands. Courtney was frantically texting someone, probably a lawyer, who wouldn't answer at midnight. Trey looked like he was about to vomit. Not if they leave in 10 minutes, I said. But if they are here at minute 11, arrest them. Understood, the officer said. He turned to my family. You heard the lady. The clock is ticking. Move. It was chaotic. It was pathetic. My father punched the code into the garage keypad. The door rolled up, revealing the wall of cardboard boxes I had packed earlier. When Trey saw the boxes, he lost it. My sneakers, he wailed. He ran into the garage and started ripping open a box labeled Trey's room. He pulled out a pair of Jordans. Where are the rest? I have 40 pairs. I cannot fit them all in the car. Get in the car! Trey Reginald shouted, losing his temper. Grab your suit and get in the damn car. But I need my PlayStation, Trey cried. Tears were streaming down his face. He was a 26-year-old man crying over video games while his parents were becoming homeless. Why is she doing this to us? It isn't fair. Courtney was useless. She refused to lift a box. She just stood by the car, sobbing about her hair humidity. I cannot believe this, she kept saying. She is a monster. She is actually making us leave. Shirley was in a trance. She walked into the garage and picked up a box marked kitchen. She held it to her chest like a baby. My china, she whispered. My grandmother's china. Mom, put it down, Trey yelled. We don't have room for plates. We need clothes. The officer stood at the end of the driveway checking his watch. 7 minutes, he called out. The panic intensified. They started shoving boxes into the Lincoln Navigator haphazardly. A box of clothes here, a box of shoes there. They realized they couldn't take the furniture. They couldn't take the TV. They couldn't take the life they had built on my back. Trey tried to jam a large box into the trunk. It wouldn't fit. He slammed the trunk door down, crushing the cardboard. I heard the sound of something breaking inside. My PS5, he screamed. He fell to his knees on the concrete driveway. He literally fell to his knees and covered his face with his hands. He sobbed loudly, a guttural, ugly sound. It wasn't the cry of a man in pain. It was the tantrum of a child who had been told no for the first time in his life. Get up, boy, Reginald hissed, grabbing Trey by the collar of his shirt. Stop embarrassing us. It is too late for that, Dad, I whispered to the empty room in my penthouse. Time is up, the officer shouted. Wheels rolling, folks, now! They scrambled into the car. The navigator was stuffed to the brim. Trey had to sit with a box on his lap in the back seat. Courtney was squeezed against the door. Shirley sat in the front staring blankly ahead. Reginald started the engine. He backed out of the driveway, nearly hitting the mailbox. As they drove away, the officer walked up to my doorbell camera one last time. Ms. Evans, he said. Yes, Sergeant. They are gone. I will have a patrol car drive by every hour tonight to make sure they don't return. You have a good night, ma'am. Thank you, Sergeant. You too. The police cars pulled away, their lights fading into the distance. The street returned to silence. The cicadas started buzzing again. I stared at the empty driveway. A few boxes were left behind, scattered on the concrete. Remnants of a family that used to be. I closed the iPad app. I walked into Leo's room. He was fast asleep, clutching his teddy bear. His breathing was steady. I kissed his forehead. For years they had made me feel small. For years they had made me feel like I was the intruder in their perfect life. But tonight the verdict was in. I was the owner. They were the trespassers. And tomorrow, while Trey was supposed to be walking across a stage, he would be waking up in a car with a crushed spine and a wrinkled suit, realizing that the real world doesn't accept excuses. I went to bed. I had a graduation to ruin in the morning. The morning sun over Atlanta was bright and unforgiving. From the balcony of my penthouse, I drank a cup of freshly brewed Ethiopian coffee. The city looked clean and full of possibility. 10 miles away, I knew my family was waking up to a very different reality. I imagined them in the cramped back seat of the Lincoln Navigator, or perhaps they had scraped together enough loose change for a single room at the Motel 6 off the highway. Their necks would be stiff, their eyes would be puffy. But I knew them. I knew their pride. They would have spent the last of their energy trying to steam the wrinkles out of Trey's graduation gown using hot water from a gas station bathroom sink. They were determined to pretend that they were still the Evans family, the royalty of Rolling Hills Drive, and not a group of homeless trespassers. Today was the day. The culmination of 8 years of wasted tuition and changed majors. Today, Trey was supposed to walk across the stage at the Georgia State Convocation Center and receive a piece of paper that certified he had done the bare minimum. I was not invited. I had been banned from the family. But as the person who had financed 90% of this degree, I felt I had a right to know the outcome. I did not need to be there in person to see the disaster. I had set the dominoes in motion yesterday afternoon with a single phone call to the university bursar. At 9 o'clock, the ceremony doors opened. I can visualize the scene perfectly. My father Reginald would be wearing his best Sunday suit, trying to hide the fact that he hadn't showered. My mother Shirley would be wearing large sunglasses to cover her red eyes. Courtney would be clinging to Trey's arm, her phone out ready to capture the moment of triumph for her Instagram followers. She needed content. She needed to prove to the world that they were winning. Trey would be nervous. He always got nervous when he had to do something on his own. He was wearing the graduation gown he had salvaged from the garage last night. Underneath, he was likely wearing the wrinkled clothes he had slept in because he never got that Tom Ford tuxedo. They joined the line of graduates waiting to check in. The air was filled with excitement. Parents were hugging their children. Friends were high-fiving. It was a celebration of hard work and sacrifice. Trey stepped up to the registration table. A nice older lady with reading glasses was sitting behind a laptop. Name, she asked, smiling. Trey Evans, he said, puffing out his chest. She typed his name into the system. She hit enter. The smile on her face vanished. She frowned and typed it again. Then she looked at the screen, then at Trey, then back at the screen. I am sorry, Mr. Evans, she said, her voice dropping to a professional whisper. I cannot issue your name card. There is a flag on your account. Trey laughed nervously. A flag? What kind of flag? I passed all my classes. I got a C- in ethics, but I passed. It is a financial hold, the lady said. A bursar hold, code 404. It means there is an outstanding balance on your tuition for this semester. Trey's face went pale. That is impossible. My sister paid it. She sent the check 2 weeks ago. I saw the email. The lady turned the screen slightly so he could not see the details, but she read the notes aloud. The check was received, yes. But it was revoked by the issuer yesterday afternoon. The funds were withdrawn. The current balance due is $12,450. Unless this is paid immediately, you are not eligible to participate in the commencement ceremony, and your diploma will be withheld. The people behind Trey in line started to grumble. They wanted to get their cards. They wanted to move forward. Courtney stepped in, her voice shrill. Excuse me, this is a mistake. His sister is... She is having a mental breakdown. She is doing this to spite us. You have to let him walk. We will sort out the money on Monday. I cannot do that, ma'am, the lady said firmly. University policy is strict. No pay, no walk. Next in line, please. Trey did not move. He stood there frozen. This was the moment his entire identity shattered. For his whole life, the path had been cleared for him. If he failed a test, my parents blamed the teacher. If he needed money, I wrote a check. He had never hit a wall that didn't have a door I could open. But this wall was made of institutional bureaucracy, and I had welded the door shut. I am not leaving, Trey shouted. His voice echoed in the registration hall. I earned this degree. You cannot stop me. Sir, please step aside, the lady said, reaching for her radio. Reginald pushed his way to the front. Now see, here I am. Reginald Evans. This is my son. Do you know who we are? We will sue this school. We will sue you personally. The security guards were already moving. 2 of them, large men in yellow windbreakers. They did not care who Reginald Evans was. They only saw a disruptive family blocking the flow of the ceremony. Sir, you need to leave the area, the first guard said, grabbing Trey's arm. Don't touch me, Trey screamed. He tried to pull away. In the struggle, his graduation cap fell off. It tumbled to the floor and was kicked by a student waiting in line. The humiliation was total. Courtney was recording, but she lowered her phone. This was not content she could post. This was a nightmare. Her husband, the future CEO, was being dragged away by campus security like an unruly drunk at a bar. My friends are watching, Trey sobbed as they pulled him toward the exit. Courtney, do something, Dad. But Reginald could do nothing. He stood there helpless. His credit cards were dead. His house was locked. And now his golden child was being tarnished in front of hundreds of people. They were escorted out the side doors into the harsh sunlight of the parking lot. The heavy metal doors slammed shut behind them, sealing them out of the future they thought they were entitled to. Back in my penthouse, my phone buzzed. It was an automated email from the university. Subject: tuition refund confirmation. Dear Ms. Evans, this email is to confirm that the stop payment request for student ID 89044, Trey Evans, has been processed. The funds have been returned to your account. I smiled. $12,000. That was enough for a nice vacation. Maybe the Maldives. Or maybe I would just put it in a trust fund for Leo. A trust fund that Trey would never touch. I imagined them standing in the parking lot. Trey was probably throwing his gown on the ground, stomping on it. Courtney was probably screaming at him for embarrassing her. Reginald and Shirley were probably blaming the university, blaming the system, blaming me. Always blaming me. But for the first time, their blame had no power. I was not there to hear it. I was not there to fix it. Trey did not get to walk across the stage. He did not get to hear his name called. He did not get the photo of him shaking the dean's hand. He got exactly what he paid for. Nothing. I finished my coffee. I had a meeting with my real estate agent at noon. I was looking for a new property, something with a view, something far away from the suburbs. As for the Evans family, their lesson in economics was just beginning. They had learned about liquidity last night. Today, they learned about solvency. And tomorrow, they would learn about survival. The internet is a dangerous place for liars. Courtney should have known that. She belongs to a generation that documents everything, yet she forgot that I document everything too. I was sitting in my living room enjoying the silence of a Saturday afternoon when my phone notified me. It was not a text or a call. It was a Google alert I had set up for my own name. I opened the link. It led me straight to TikTok. There was Courtney. She was sitting in the front seat of my father's Lincoln Navigator, which was parked in the lot of a Motel 6. The lighting was perfect, likely a ring light clipped to the dashboard. Her mascara was running down her cheeks. Her eyes were red and puffy. She looked like the poster child for tragedy. "Hey guys," she whispered into the camera, her voice trembling. "I do not usually do this. I try to be positive, but I just do not know what else to do. My husband's sister, she is a monster." I watched as the view count ticked up. 50,000, 100,000, 200,000. It was going viral in real time. She continued her performance. She is a multi-millionaire real estate mogul. She has everything. And yesterday she kicked her own elderly parents out onto the street. My father-in-law has a heart condition. My mother-in-law is diabetic. She locked them out. She threw our clothes in the garage like trash. And today she got my husband kicked out of his own graduation. We are homeless. We have no money for food. She cut off our cards. She is financially abusing us because she hates that we are happy. Please, if anyone can help, my Cash App is in the bio. We just want a warm meal. I scrolled down to the comments. They were vicious. User 789 wrote, "This is disgusting. What is her name? We ride at dawn." Soccer Mom 4. Life wrote, "How can a daughter do that to her parents? Evil. Justice." Fortray wrote, "Drop her business name. We will boycott her." The mob was forming. They had pitchforks and torches, and they were coming for me. Courtney had painted a masterpiece of victimhood. She used all the buzzwords: financial abuse, elderly abuse, narcissist. She had weaponized her tears to destroy my reputation. I could have panicked. I could have reported the video. I could have called her and begged her to take it down. Instead, I opened my laptop. I went to the folder on my desktop labeled Receipts. It was a folder I had been curating for 5 years. Every bank transfer, every legal document, every text message, every photo. Courtney wanted to play the media game. Fine. I own a media company. Well, I own the building the media company rents, but I know a thing or two about storytelling. I opened TikTok. I created a new account. I named it The Receipts Queen. I did not film myself crying. I did not use a filter. I filmed my computer screen. I filmed the truth. I started the video with a simple voiceover. This is the sister, and here is the rest of the story. Slide 1. The photo of Leo sitting alone at his birthday party. The timestamp clearly visible. Voiceover. This is my 6-year-old son on Sunday. He has asthma. He sat alone for 3 hours waiting for the elderly parents you are crying about. They did not show up. Slide 2. The screenshot of Courtney's Instagram story from the same time. The mimosa brunch. The timestamp matching Leo's party. The bill for $600. Voiceover. This is where they were. Spending $600 on brunch while lying to a child that their car broke down. Slide 3. The banking history. I scrolled through it slowly so people could read the numbers. Voiceover. You said I financially abuse them. Here's the tuition payment for your husband's 8th year of college. $12,000. Here's the payment for your engagement ring. $8,000. Here's the payment for your car note. $500 a month for 3 years. In total, I have given this family $450,000 in the last decade. Slide 4. This was the kill shot. The foreclosure notice from 5 years ago. Voiceover. You said I kicked them out of their house. This is the foreclosure notice from 5 years ago. My father gambled the house away. He lost it. I bought it from the bank to save them from being homeless then. They have lived there rent-free for 5 years. I pay the taxes. I pay the insurance. And in return, they abuse my son and treat me like a bank. Slide 5. The text message from my father demanding $2,800. Voiceover. This is the text I got 3 days after they missed my son's birthday. No apology, just a demand for cash. I ended the video with a simple statement. I did not evict my parents because I am cruel. I evicted them because I am done paying for people who abuse me. Courtney used the Cash App money to buy some integrity. I hit post. I tagged Courtney. I used the same hashtags she used. Hashtag family trauma. Hashtag narcissist. Hashtag the truth. Then I waited. The internet is a fickle beast. It loves a victim, but it loves an exposed liar even more. Within an hour, my video had surpassed hers. It had 2 million views. I watched the tide turn. It was like watching a tsunami change direction. The comments on Courtney's video stopped being supportive and started being savage. User 789 returned, OMG. I just saw the sister's response. Courtney, you are a liar. Soccer mom. 4. Life wrote, you missed his birthday for brunch, and he paid for your ring, girl. Give it back. Give it. Justice for Trey wrote, I take it back. Team Kamara all the way. She brought the receipts. People started stitching the videos together. Influencers started reacting to it. They were dissecting Courtney's lies frame by frame. They pointed out her designer handbag in the background of her homeless video. They pointed out that her nails were freshly done. The internet detectives went to work. They found the public records of the house deed. They confirmed I was the owner. They found my father's old bankruptcy filings. Courtney's phone must have been melting. I refreshed her page. The comments were turned off. 10 minutes later, the video was deleted. 10 minutes after that, her entire account was set to private. She had started a fire hoping to burn me, but the wind had shifted, and now she was the one engulfed in flames. My phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, but I had a feeling. I answered. Hello, you ruined me, Courtney screamed. She didn't sound sad anymore. She sounded feral. People are sending me death threats. My friends are unfollowing me. Brands are emailing me to cancel collaborations. How could you do this? I took a sip of my coffee. It was cold, but it tasted sweet. You did this, Courtney, I said calmly. You wanted attention. You wanted to be famous. Congratulations. You are famous. Take it down, she shrieked. Take the video down right now. No, I said. It stays up. It stays up as a permanent record. Because if I take it down, you will just lie again in 6 months. This is your legacy now. You are the woman who chose mimosas over her nephew and then cried about being homeless in a Lincoln Navigator. She screamed something unintelligible, a mixture of curse words and sobs. I hung up. I looked at the view count on my video. 3 million. I read a comment from a stranger. I hope you and your son are okay. You did the right thing. Cut them off and never look back. I liked the comment. The smear campaign had failed. In fact, it had backfired so spectacularly that it had validated my entire decision. The world had seen the truth. My family wasn't the victim of a cruel daughter. They were the architects of their own destruction. I closed my laptop. The court of public opinion had reached a verdict. Kamara Evans was not guilty. I walked into the kitchen to start dinner. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across my penthouse. I felt safe. I felt vindicated. And for the first time, I realized that I didn't care what they thought of me. Let them tell their stories. Let them play the victim. I had the truth. And in the digital age, the truth is the only currency that matters. Courtney thought she could destroy me with a TikTok video. She forgot one crucial rule of engagement: never bring a lie to a receipt fight. The Motel 6 off Interstate 20 is not a place where dignity goes to live. It is a place of flickering neon lights, synthetic bedspreads that have seen too many tragedies, and the constant droning roar of highway traffic. This was the new castle of the Evans dynasty. My father, Reginald, who used to sit at the head of a mahogany dining table, was now sitting on the edge of a stained mattress, eating a sandwich wrapped in plastic from a vending machine. My mother, Shirley, who once prided herself on hosting the church garden party, was hand-washing her underwear in a bathroom sink that dripped incessantly. They had been there for 48 hours. The denial that had sustained them on Friday night had evaporated by Sunday morning. There was no power to turn back on. There was no house to return to. The eviction was legal binding and absolute. The reality of their situation was settling in like a heavy, suffocating fog. They were not just temporarily displaced. They were poor. But rock bottom has a basement, and they were about to find the trapdoor. I learned the details later through the grapevine of social media and public records, but I can reconstruct the scene with perfect clarity because I know the players involved. I know exactly what happens when a parasite realizes the host is dead. It happened in the parking lot of the motel at 10 in the morning. Trey was sitting on the curb outside their room smoking a cigarette he had bummed from a neighbor. He was still wearing the pants from his graduation outfit, now wrinkled and stained. He looked defeated. He looked like a child waiting for his mother to pick him up from school. The door to the motel room opened. Courtney stepped out. She was not crying anymore. The tears she had shed on TikTok were for show. The tears she shed at the house were for herself. Now her eyes were dry and cold. She was dragging 2 large suitcases. These were the suitcases containing the clothes she had managed to salvage from the garage. Trey looked up, confused. "Babe, where are you going? Are we moving to a better hotel? Did Dad find some money?" Courtney did not stop walking. She marched straight toward the Lincoln Navigator, the only asset the family had left, although technically the bank owned most of it. "I am leaving, Trey," she said. Her voice was flat, devoid of emotion. "Leaving? What do you mean? We are in this together. We are going to figure this out." "No," Courtney said, popping the trunk. "We are not. You are going to figure this out. I am going to my sister's house in Charlotte." Trey stood up, panic rising in his chest. "But you can't leave me here. We are married. You said for better or for worse." Courtney laughed. It was a harsh, ugly sound. "For better or for worse. Trey, look around you. We are at a Motel 6. You do not have a degree. You do not have a job. You do not have a trust fund. You lied to me. You and your parents sold me a dream. You told me you were wealthy. You told me your sister was just the help. But she was the bank. And without her, you are nothing." She slammed the trunk shut. "I didn't sign up for poverty, Trey," she continued, walking to the driver's side door. "I didn't sign up to wash my hair in a sink and eat vending machine crackers. I have a brand to maintain. I have a life to live. And I am not going to waste my youth dragging a dead weight like you." Trey ran to the car door. He grabbed the handle. "Courtney, please, I love you." Courtney looked at him with pure disgust. She pulled a piece of paper from her purse and shoved it into his chest. "My lawyer will contact you on Monday," she said. "I am filing for divorce, irreconcilable differences, and fraud, because that is what this marriage was, a fraud." She got into the car. She locked the doors. Trey pounded on the window. "That is my dad's car. You can't take the car. How are we going to get around? Possession is 9/10 of the law," Courtney yelled through the glass. "And since your name isn't on the title and your dad owes payments on it, I guess I will take my chances." She started the engine. The Lincoln Navigator, the symbol of their status, roared to life. She didn't look back. She put it in reverse, backed out of the spot, and sped out of the parking lot, leaving a cloud of exhaust fumes in her wake. Trey stood there in the parking lot, holding the divorce papers against his chest. He watched the taillights disappear onto the highway. His wife was gone. His car was gone. His dignity was gone. Reginald and Shirley came out of the room, alerted by the shouting. They saw Trey standing alone. They saw the empty parking space. "Where is Courtney?" Shirley asked. "Where is the car?" "She left," Trey whispered. He sank back down onto the curb. "She took the car. She is divorcing me." Shirley gasped. But we need that car. How will we get to church? How will we go to the store?" Reginald didn't say anything. He just leaned against the dirty brick wall of the motel and slid down until he was squatting on his heels. He put his head in his hands. The patriarch had fallen. For the next 2 days, they sat in that motel room. The money I had given them over the years was gone, spent on clothes and dinners and appearances. They had zero savings. The credit cards were dead. On Tuesday morning, the motel manager knocked on the door. "Checkout time is 11, he said, "unless you are paying for another week." They counted their cash. They had $40 between them. That wasn't enough for a night. "We have to do something," Reginald said, his voice hoarse. "We need money." Trey looked at his father. He waited for the plan. He waited for Reginald to say he had a secret investment or a friend who owed him a favor. "You need to get a job, son," Reginald said. Trey blinked. "Me? What about you?" "I am retired," Reginald snapped. "I have a bad back. You are young. You are strong. Go out there and find work. Anything. We need cash for the room tonight." So Trey Evans, the future CEO, the man who refused to eat leftovers, put on his wrinkled graduation pants and walked out of the motel. He walked 2 miles down the highway because he didn't have a car or Uber money. He walked until he found a staffing agency in a strip mall. He walked inside. The air conditioning was cold. It felt like heaven after the humid walk. He approached the recruiter. "I need a job," he said. "I have a degree. Well, almost a degree. In general studies." The recruiter, a tired woman named Brenda, didn't even look up. "We don't have any office placements right now. The market is tight. I will take anything," Trey said. He was thinking maybe a receptionist or a file clerk. "Can you lift 50 pounds?" Brenda asked. "Excuse me, can you lift 50 pounds repeatedly for 8 hours? We have a spot open at the Amazon Fulfillment Center. Night shift, picking and packing. $15 an hour. Start tonight." Trey looked at his soft hands. Hands that had never held anything heavier than a champagne glass or a game controller. $15 an hour. He did the math. It would take him 10 hours just to pay for the suit he wanted. It would take him a lifetime to get back to where he was last week. But he thought of the motel room. He thought of his mother washing underwear in the sink. He thought of Courtney driving away in the Lincoln. "I can lift it," Trey whispered. "Fill out this form," Brenda said, sliding a clipboard across the counter. Trey took the pen. He looked at the section marked Education. High school diploma, he checked. College degree, he left blank. Emergency contact. He hesitated. He started to write KAMA, then stopped. He crossed it out. He realized with a heavy, sinking feeling in his gut that he had no emergency contact. He was on his own. He signed his name at the bottom. Trey Evans, laborer. Back in my penthouse, I received a notification from my security team. It was a standard report on local hiring trends for my logistics company. I scanned the list of new temp hires provided by the staffing agencies we used for overflow work. There at the bottom of the list for Warehouse B was a familiar name, Trey Evans. Picker/packer, night shift. I laughed. I laughed until tears ran down my face. Warehouse B was the very same building where I had stood last week when I sent the $1 transfer. It was the building I owned. My brother was now working for me. He was going to be lifting boxes in a building paid for by the sister he despised, earning $15 an hour to support the parents who disowned me. The circle was complete. The crumbling was total. I picked up my phone and sent a text to the warehouse manager. Keep an eye on the new hire, Trey Evans. Make sure he hits his quota. No special treatment. I hit send. The golden child had finally turned into base metal, and I was the one holding the magnet. The for sale sign on the lawn of 1402 Rolling Hills Drive did not stay up for very long. The real estate market in Atlanta was hot, and despite the negative energy my family had left inside those walls, the structure itself was valuable. I did not step foot inside the house again after the eviction. I hired a staging company to come in and paint everything white. I wanted to erase the beige walls my mother loved. I wanted to erase the scuff marks from Trey's sneakers in the hallway. I wanted to turn the home that had been my prison into a blank canvas for someone else. We received multiple offers within 48 hours. It was a bidding war. I sat in my office and watched the numbers climb. It was ironic. My father had lost this house because he needed money, and now the house was generating more wealth than he had ever seen in his life. But he would not see a dime of it. Every cent of the equity belonged to KE Holdings, LLC. I accepted an all-cash offer that was $50,000 over the asking price. When the wire transfer hit my account, it felt heavy. It was a net profit of $300,000 after paying off the remainder of the mortgage I had carried for 5 years. $300,000. That was the price of my freedom. That was the severance package for my role as the family scapegoat. I did not keep the money in the bank. I used it to build a new fortress. I bought a property in Sandy Springs, far away from the suburbs where I grew up. It was a modern villa hidden behind tall privacy hedges and iron gates. It had floor-to-ceiling windows that let in the light. It had a swimming pool for Leo. It had a home theater where we could watch his space documentaries on a screen bigger than a movie theater. But the most important feature of this new house was who was not in it. There was no guest room for my parents. There was no basement apartment for Trey. There was only space for me, for Leo, and for peace. Move-in day was quiet. There was no screaming. There was no drama. Just me and Leo unpacking boxes and laughing. "Mommy, is this really our house?" Leo asked, running his hand along the smooth quartz island in the kitchen. "Yes, baby," I told him. "This is our house, and nobody can ever kick us out, and nobody can ever make us feel small here." We settled into a rhythm. A life without toxic obligations is surprisingly spacious. I had so much free time. I wasn't spending my weekends driving my mother to the mall or fixing my father's online banking errors. I wasn't spending my nights worrying about Trey's credit card bills. I was just living. 6 months passed. The silence from my family was absolute, mostly because I had blocked every avenue of communication. I assumed they had moved on, or at least found a new victim to leech off of. But narcissists do not let go that easily. They always circle back when they are desperate. It was a Tuesday evening. I was helping Leo with his homework. My phone rang. It was a number I did not recognize, but the area code was local. I assumed it was a contractor for the new house or maybe a client. I answered the phone. "This is Kamara." There was a silence on the other end. A heavy, wet silence. Then a sniffle. "Kamara." The voice was thin and trembling. It took me a second to place it because I had never heard this specific tone before. It was my mother, Shirley. But it wasn't the arrogant Shirley who demanded mimosas. It wasn't the angry Shirley who tore up the eviction notice. This was a broken woman. I did not say anything. I just held the phone to my ear, watching Leo color in a picture of an astronaut. "Kamara, please do not hang up," she sobbed. "I am calling from a prepaid phone. We do not have much time." I still said nothing. I wanted to hear it. I wanted to hear the reality of their choices. "We are living in a one-bedroom apartment in Decatur," she whispered. "It is awful, Kamara. The neighbors are loud. There are bugs. Your father..." His back is getting worse. He cannot sleep on the mattress we have. And Trey? Trey is working at a warehouse. He comes home so tired he cannot even speak. Courtney left him. She took everything. We have nothing left. She paused, waiting for me to jump in, waiting for me to offer to send a check, waiting for the old Kamara to surface and fix it. But the old Kamara was gone. I am sorry, Mom, she continued, her voice cracking. I am so sorry about the birthday party. We should have been there. We made a mistake. Please, we are family. You cannot leave us like this. God says to honor your parents. God also says, you reap what you sow, I thought to myself. I looked at Leo. He was happy. He was healthy. He hadn't asked about his grandmother in months. He had forgotten the pain, because I had removed the source of it. Camera. Are you there? Say something, please. Help us. I took a deep breath. I felt absolutely nothing. No anger, no sadness, just a cool, calm finality. I am sorry, I said, my voice steady and polite. I think you have the wrong number. No, this is Kamara, I know your voice. Don't do this. You are mistaken, ma'am, I said. The person you are looking for does not exist anymore. Your daughter died on your grandson's 6th birthday. The woman speaking to you is a stranger. And strangers do not pay your rent. But Kamara... Please do not call here again, I said. I pressed the red button. I immediately went into the settings and blocked the number. It was done. That was the last ghost. I had exorcised it from my life with a single sentence. I put the phone down on the counter and turned to Leo. Who was that mommy? He asked, looking up from his drawing. Nobody, baby, I smiled. Just a wrong number. Hey, how would you like to go on a trip? Leo's eyes lit up. A trip? Where? To the warehouse? No, I laughed. Better than the warehouse. How about we go to see a really big mouse? Leo dropped his crayon. Disney World. Disney World, I confirmed. Pack your bags, kid. We leave tomorrow morning, first class. The trip to Orlando was a blur of magic. We stayed at the Grand Floridian. We had a view of the castle. We ate ice cream for breakfast. We rode Space Mountain 3 times in a row. On the last night, we stood on the balcony watching the fireworks explode over the Cinderella castle. The sky was lit up in brilliant shades of gold, purple, and red. I looked down at my son. He was wearing Mickey Mouse ears with his name embroidered on the back. He was glowing. He was looking at the fireworks with pure, unadulterated joy. There was no asthma wheeze in his chest. There was no sadness in his eyes. He looked up at me and grabbed my hand. Mommy, he said. Yes, Leo. This is the best birthday ever, he said. Even if it is 6 months late. I squeezed his hand. It is, isn't it? I realized then that I had won. The victory wasn't the money I made from the house. It wasn't the satisfaction of seeing Trey working in my warehouse. It wasn't even the power of blocking their calls. The victory was this. The victory was standing here healthy and whole with the only family that mattered. I had lost parents who never loved me, but I had found a life that I loved. I had traded a toxic legacy for a magical future. I pulled out my phone one last time. I took a picture of Leo against the backdrop of the fireworks. I posted it to my social media. Caption: Family isn't whose blood you carry. It is who holds your hand when the fireworks start. I put the phone away. I didn't care if they saw it. I didn't care if they were sitting in their bug-infested apartment stewing in regret. Their chapter was closed. The book was finished. I looked up at the sky, taking a deep breath of the humid Florida air. It tasted like sugar and gunpowder. It tasted like freedom. And as the final firework boomed across the sky, shaking the ground beneath our feet, I knew that for Kamara and Leo, the real magic was just beginning. This is Kamara signing off. If you have ever had to cut off a limb to save the body, leave a comment below. You are not alone. And remember, the best revenge is not hate. It is living a life so beautiful that they cannot even bear to look at it. Kamara's journey serves as a powerful reminder that sharing DNA is not a license for exploitation. For years, she believed her value was tied to her utility, paying a premium for a love that was never real. However, she teaches us that you cannot purchase respect from people who are committed to using you. True freedom begins the moment you realize that no is a complete sentence. Walking away from toxic family is not an act of betrayal. It is an act of survival. Your peace is the one asset you must never allow anyone to bankrupt. Hit the like button if you agree that you should never set yourself on fire just to keep ungrateful people warm, and subscribe to our channel to join a community that knows your worth is not negotiable.